I get a lot of people who come up to the tours desk or ask me on my tours, is the place really haunted? Oh yeah, it's haunted.
So he put the dolls there to keep the spirit of the girl in peace.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Which is probably one of the reasons why there are ghost stories.
So a few moments later, I decided I'm going to walk out backwards. And the entire time I did that and I got out of sight around the corner, whatever that thing was still standing there staring at me.
What?
Metal.
Metal.
Are you kidding me? Metal? Are you serious?
If you look very closely in the background, you can faintly see an unexplained figure walking.
Is that true?
Yes.
It is.
It is true.
The Driscoll Hotel in Austin is rumored to be alive with the ghosts of the past who reveal themselves to guests of the present. Colonel Jesse Driscoll opened the luxurious hotel in 1886. The wealthy cattle baron bought the corner lot of Brazos and 6th Street for $7,500. The Driscoll has welcomed high society events and historic political events over the years. In 1934, Lyndon Baines Johnson met his future wife, Lady Bird, at the Driscoll. He later used the hotel as his headquarters for the White House press corps. Today, guests say the hotel is haunted by Colonel Driscoll's spirit. He was known as an avid cigar smoker, and at times guests report the smell of cigar smoke despite the fact the hotel has been smoke-free for several years. They also say Colonel Driscoll has a fascination with lights. It could happen by his portrait or anywhere in the hotel. It's very likely Colonel Driscoll is checking in on his property. Among the stories of the Driscoll is the legend of Peter Lawless. He was a railroad man who lived at the Driscoll for 31 years until his death in 1917. Some say his spirit still haunts the hotel today. Guests and employees have reported seeing Lawless in hotel lobby elevators. He can often be seen walking out of the elevator, checking his railroad watch, nodding to the staff, and then disappearing. The spirit of a little girl is also said to haunt the Driscoll Hotel. In 1887, 4-year-old Samantha Houston was chasing a bull when she fell to her death on the grand staircase. She was the daughter of a Texas senator. Guests have heard the unexplained laughter of a little girl and the sound of a bouncing ball in different areas of the hotel. Samantha's father paid for someone to paint her portrait shortly after her death. It now hangs on the 5th floor of the Driscoll. Some say she tries to communicate through it. People say once in a while you can catch her giving a smile and her expression will change in the painting. These mysterious happenings are why the Driscoll is known as the most haunted hotel in Texas. It attracts guests looking to encounter visitors from the other side. They are playful, mischievous, very quirky sense of humor when it comes to playing little tricks on people. Coming in at number 5, we have LaFonda on the Plaza in Santa Fe, New Mexico. In the historic district of Santa Fe, New Mexico sits the historic LaFonda Hotel. This old hotel has been providing a pillow for weary travelers since 1922. The location itself has been called home to some kind of inn or fonda since Santa Fe's earliest days. When Santa Fe was founded in 1607, records show that an inn on this location was one of the first businesses established in the new settlement. According to local law, court was held in the original Adobe Hotel, as well as executions, when guilty offenders were hanged in the lobby. Over the years, the hotel was destroyed and rebuilt several times over. As more and more pioneers traveled the Santa Fe Trail, the LaFonda became a popular destination for trappers, traders, mountain men, soldiers, politicians, and the like. The gambling hall continued to be a major feature, however, providing entertainment for military officers and the occasional professional gambler. Fortunes were made and lost here, and one unfortunate person lost his life in 1857 at the end of a rope strung up in the hotel's backyard by a lynch mob. 10 years later, in 1867, the John P. Slough, Chief Justice of the Territorial Supreme Court, was fatally shot in the hotel lobby. Slough was in a dispute with Captain Reinerson, a member of the territorial legislature, when he called Reinerson a liar and a thief. More than a century ago, a distraught salesman who lost his company's money in a card game leaped down a deep well that was located just outside the gambling hall of the Exchange Hotel. Most of the history of the hotel is strung together by a string of tragedies. The hotel has seen more than its fair share of violence and anger. Today, the LaFonda Hotel is said to host not only travelers visiting Santa Fe, but also several ghosts. Some people believe that Judge Slough continues to walk its hallways. However, more often reported is the ghost of the distraught salesman who jumped into the well after losing all of his company's money. The hotel's dining room, called the La Plazuela, is situated directly over the old well, and both guests and staff alike have reported the sight of a ghostly figure that walks to the center of the room, then seemingly jumps into the floor and disappears. In the 1970s, a guest reportedly called the front desk to complain that someone was walking up and down the hallway in front of his room. When an employee was sent to investigate, he saw a tall man in a long black coat disappear into a stairwell. However, when he followed him to the stairs, there was no sign of the mysterious visitor. Today, the LaFonda Hotel is a vibrant historic landmark on Santa Fe's downtown plaza, known for its award-winning architecture and decor unique artwork. Guests don't appear to be put off by the spirits that still live there, with some staying there in hopes of encountering a lost spirit. In at number 3, we have Hotel Chelsea in New York City. The Hotel Chelsea has been a formidable presence on the West 23rd Street since the 1880s, taking up a large section of the block between 7th and 8th Avenues. Over the past decades, the hotel has become a shell of its former self, as ownership has changed hands. We've seen its legendary walls enshrouded in scaffolding, and long-time residents leave as the building is transformed into luxury hotels. A list of notable building residents have called the Hotel Chelsea home, from authors like Mark Twain, Dylan Thomas, as well as Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey there. There is no other building in NYC that has been the home, the muse, and the inspiration for multiple generations of artists. Opened in 1884 as an experiment by architect Philip Hubert, Hotel Chelsea was Manhattan's first cooperative building that catered to the personal and professional needs of inhabitants. It was a social experiment of sorts for a mix of the carpenters, electricians, and interior designers who created the place, in addition to a handful of artists, writers, and singers. From its inception, the 12-story building was a haven for creative types, and it didn't take long for the walls of the common spaces, which at time included dining halls, to become decorated with canvases and murals, some of which were created by the esteemed students of the Hudson River School. But Hubert's social experiment quickly went bankrupt and belly up. In 1905, Hotel Chelsea opened its doors to the world, offering luxury accommodations on Manhattan's West 23rd Street. A few decades later, after plenty of wear and tear, management was forced to lower room prices to mirror the condition of the rooms. During its glittering peak, day-to-day life at Hotel Chelsea was far from glamorous. Tenants would gather to smoke and drink in the hallways of the Victorian Gothic building. Drug use was rampant, and someone was always accidentally setting something on fire. The hotel shuttered to visitors in 2011, and after a series of unsuccessful acquisitions, was ultimately purchased 5 years later by a trio of hoteliers: Richard Bourne and Ira Druckier of BD Hotels, and Sean McPherson of Bowery Hotel and Jane Hotel. The new owners are in the midst of doing a thorough renovation of the ailing space, planned to reopen it in 2019 as a glittering luxury destination. With the hotel's long and complicated history full of every type of person, there have been spirits that have been trapped within the walls. Nancy Spungen, girlfriend of Sid Vicious of the Sex Pistols, was found stabbed on October 12, 1978. She was found on the hotel bathroom floor by the staff. She did not survive her attack. Sid was charged with her murder but died before he could be convicted. The next tragedy that is considered to be quite popular when it comes to the Hotel Chelsea is that of poet and writer named Dylan Marlays Thomas. This occurred many years earlier than Nancy's, on the 9th day of November in the year 1953. In October of 1953, Mr. Thomas arrived in the state of New York, and according to those around him, he had wealth and medical problems. Many claim that he had suffered from regular blackouts and even suffered from medical conditions associated with his heart. In addition to these issues, he also had to carry an inhaler because of the fact that he suffered from a respiratory condition. He became ill during his stay at the hotel. He passed away 3 days later from pneumonia. However, some people believe he was poisoned. Both Nancy and Dylan, along with other lesser-known ghosts, are known to plague their own rooms within the hotel. Some guests have heard screaming from Nancy's bathroom when staying in the neighboring rooms, or waking up suddenly in the night. Others have heard footsteps from outside the rooms, along with running up and down the halls. Currently, renovations continue as of April 2021, with a plan to reopen by the end of the year. Will you visit once the hotel is reopened? Will the renovations make a difference to the hauntings? Probably not. In at number 2, we have Hawthorne Hotel in Salem, Massachusetts. The Hotel Hawthorne has been one of the most cherished landmarks in Salem for a century. The hotel was a joint venture for the town, looking to build their first hotel to service visitors. They decided to name the hotel after author Nathaniel Hawthorne, who grew up in the town. Opening in July of 1925, the new magnificent destination offered 150 outstanding guest rooms, as well as a 2-story lobby complete with a mezzanine and balcony. It even attracted series of illustrious guests, including the likes of Betty Davis and Johnny Cash, but it was the television sitcom Bewitched that brought the Hawthorne Hotel its greatest fame. In 1970, Elizabeth Montgomery, her real-life husband Bill Asher, and the rest of the cast and crew stayed at the Hawthorne Hotel while filming episodes for the show. The hotel was flooded with calls asking if it was the Bewitched Hotel for years after the Salem saga first aired. Bridget Bishop was one of the poor women accused and convicted of witchcraft, was said to have owned an apple orchard upon which the hotel was later built. Many guests maintain that they have encountered her very spirit within the hotel. In front of the 6th floor's room 612, the apparition of a woman is often seen standing still. From time to time, she will wander up and down the hallway where room 6 612 is located. Within the room, guests have complained of the sensation that they are not alone, as if someone else is sharing the room with them. And inside room 325 of the 3rd floor, there have been several reports of hearing an unseen baby crying, lights turning off and on, and even the water faucets turning on and off. Others have reported numerous unidentifiable sounds. One particular employee refuses to work nights ever again. During his evening shift, after cleaning a room, he went to get supplies and returned to find the room's entire configuration changed around. With the hotel being built in Salem, there is no telling just how many tortured women still roam on the land, all dying in horrific ways their spirits have struggled to pass on and accept their fate. And lastly, in at number 1, we have the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. The Rocky Mountains are home to a hotel that's widely considered one of the most haunted places in America, and it has ties to a renowned horror film. The Stanley Hotel in Colorado is said to be haunted by several different ghosts, from past owners to children and even a couple pets. Along with its haunted reputation, the colonial revival style hotel also inspired author Stephen King to write The Shining, one of his most popular novels that was adapted into a 1980 film starring Jack Nicholson. The Stanley Hotel was built by inventor Freeland Stanley, who moved out to Colorado hoping that the fresh air and plentiful sunlight would relieve his tuberculosis. When he arrived in 1903, he was weak and underweight, but after just one season, hotel staff says his health was restored. The hotel says Stanley was so overjoyed that he vowed to return each summer and ended up building the hotel to bring a level of sophistication to the region. The Stanley Hotel opened in 1909. Stanley died in 1940 at the age of 91, but his spirit is still said to roam the hotel. Specifically, staff says he's been spotted in the hotel's billiard room and bar. Stanley's wife Flora has also reportedly been spotted in the hotel and is known to tickle the keys of a piano. Another ghost that's been said to show up is a former housekeeper of the hotel, Elizabeth Wilson, or Mrs. Wilson. Tour guides say Wilson was lighting lanterns in room 217 when she was seriously injured in an explosion. She survived the blast but passed away years later. Now it seems Wilson is a regular in room 217. Guests report items being moved, luggage being packed up, and lights going off and on. It also seems Wilson is rather conservative. Guides say she's not a fan of unmarried couples. People who aren't married have reported feeling cold presence between them while in bed. On the 4th floor, guests have also reported hearing children running around, laughing and playing. Guides say that's where nannies and kids they watched would spend much of their time back in the day. Not all of the hotel's purported ghosts stand on 2 legs. There's a pet cemetery on the grounds that guides say is the final resting place of some of the owner's animals. Staff says the ghosts of a cat and a dog have been roaming around. Could this cemetery also be the inspiration for King's novel Pet Sematary? It definitely seems possible. Guides end their tour in a cave system below the hotel, where staff says there's a higher than average concentration of limestone and quartz, which is believed by some to draw spirits to the property. Do you dare visit the Shining Hotel? Coming in at number 5, we have Westmark Fairbanks Hotel. Starting off with the Westmark Fairbanks Hotel, located in downtown Fairbanks, Alaska. This is considered to be the finest hotel in Fairbanks. It was built by the former governor Walter Hickel in 1987, but has gone through some transformations over the years, but is still considered to be a go-to stay for couples, families, and business professionals. Not only is it a hub for tourists to stay, it also intrigues paranormal investigators who believe this hotel is indeed haunted. According to locals around the area, they have claimed to see an apparition-like figure that resembles a huge man that spends the night in room 277. He likes to make himself known by pushing the beds, poking guests in the shoulder, and even ruffling up the carpets in the room. Another ghost that is often seen at the hotel is that of a little girl who is seen roaming up and down the hallways, and sometimes she is heard laughing. Also, an apparition of a male often appears in the elevator or walks around the main entrance of the hotel. Guests who have stayed at the hotel have also claimed to have seen doors opening and closing on their own. Many paranormal investigators and enthusiasts are currently exploring this so-called haunted hotel, so more about their findings should come out in the near future. So if you plan on exploring this haunted hotel, please proceed with caution and get on the internet and share your findings to other ghost enthusiasts. Coming in at number 4, we have Gakona Lodge and Trading Post. Gakona Lodge and Trading Post is located in the Cooper River Valley in south central Alaska and is the oldest roadhouse in operation in the whole state. So you know that it has a lot of history and stories from locals and people who've stayed at the lodge. Jim Doyle built the lodge, an ice house and a storage shed in 1904, and was named named Doyle's Roadhouse. The original building still exists on the property today but are no longer in use. Before selling the lodge in 1912, there are rumors that a notorious serial killer known as the Blueberry Kid even stayed at the lodge. Between the selling of the lodge in 1912 to about 1920, the lodge went through many different owners until a Norwegian man and his wife bought it, until selling it once again in 1976 to Jerry and Barbara Strang, who were among the first owners to report paranormal activity on the property. Barbara had a strange event happen when some of the kitchen workers had actually tried to contact a spirit in the lodge when the power just suddenly went out. Yes, the power did sometimes go out in the lodge because of the harsh weather, but Barbara definitely believes that this time it was in fact the work of the paranormal. Another story is about a man named John Paulson who would frequent the lodge not only as a customer but also a business partner as well. John always stayed in room number 5, and to this day people report hearing stomping coming from that particular room. John was an avid smoker, and stories from people that stay at the lodge today say they can always smell tobacco coming from room 5, even though there has been a no smoking policy at the lodge for almost a decade now. If you are brave enough to visit this paranormal lodge, you could even ask to stay in room 5 and maybe be able to hear the stomps and smell the tobacco. Coming in at number 3, we have Van Gelder Hotel. This is another hotel on our list, and it's the Van Gelder Hotel, which is another very old building known for paranormal activity due to the many people who have visited and even locals. The hotel was built in 1916 in downtown Seward, Alaska. It originally was built as an office building but then was converted into apartment buildings and then finally into a hotel. The hotel hasn't changed much since when it was built, just small touch-ups and interior changes have been done to keep the authentic feel of this very old hotel. The most popular ghost story from this hotel is that of Fanny Guthrie Bayham, a woman who died in this hotel in the 1950s and is said to haunt room 202. She is described as a younger woman who has long blonde hair and wears a blue dress. Fanny is one of many ghosts that haunt the hotel, but the only one that can actually be identified. It is believed that Fanny was shot in the head by her drunk husband one night, and she still roams this hotel to this day. An eyewitness account who was staying at the hotel in 2001 remembers that one night at 1:21 AM, she was awoken to the whole building shaking and heard someone running up and down the stairs. The guest then asks a worker at the hotel if there was just an earthquake, to which the worker told her no. The customer had actually experienced the ghost of Fanny reliving her murder. Along with Fanny, there have been sightings of a lone, unidentifiable man who is said to appear only as wisps and orbs, as well as sightings of 2 men wearing bowler hats and can be seen standing behind the front desk, and also 3 children can be seen running from room to room, giggling when there are no guests staying at the hotel. If I were you, I would avoid staying at this place at all costs. Wish I knew where this hotel was. I stayed at a hotel in Seward, Alaska with my family once, and we had a weird situation, but it was just us. We were just the weird ones. We went fishing, we were fishing all day, getting rockfish. We're out in the waters. And then we went back to the hotel we were staying at, and we had planned to go out for dinner, but we were like, let's just take a light nap. And we all woke up at like 2-3 AM in our coats, jackets, like, it was like, it was f***ing weird, like. Coming in at number 2, we have Tonsina River Lodge. Next on this list is the Tonsina River Lodge, which is located in Tonsina, Alaska, and is part of the Copper River Valley area. The lodge is considered to be the centerpiece of Tonsina Valley. Originally named the Donaldson Roadhouse, it was built by Jim Donaldson in the 1900s, and then later in 1902, Jake Nafstad and Fred A. Martin added onto the main roadhouse building and ultimately changed the name to the Tonsina Roadhouse. It would later go under another name change, the Upper Tonsina Roadhouse, and underwent some more accommodations which could house up to 60 guests. This hotel is very historic and actually was once a brothel before it had eventually become the Tonsina River Lodge. The most popular ghost in the lodge is Charlie, who had been seen by many different workers at the lodge as well as tourists staying there. There are a few different stories of what happened to Charlie, one being that he was wanted for murder in Canada and went on the run. When authorities caught up to him, he resisted arrest and was shot and died in room 18. Another account says that Charlie got rejected from his love interest and having nothing to live for, he ended up taking his own life in room 18, and to this day he is seen wandering up and down the hallways looking for his beloved. A third version about Charlie is that during the Great Depression, Charlie was living in Seattle, and not being able to find work, he boarded a ship and decided to go to Alaska, eventually making his way to Tonsina and getting a job at the Roadhouse. He really enjoyed his job, but unfortunately Charlie ended up passing away in room 18. His body was buried on a hill behind the Roadhouse. People believe that Charlie was so happy with his life at the lodge, even in his afterlife, he never left. Many people who have come in contact with Charlie say that he is a very friendly and peaceful ghost, and workers and tourists say they were not feared by Charlie. So if you're intrigued by Charlie and his story, you can go visit Tonsina, Alaska and stay in his old room. And finally, coming in at number 1, Hilton Anchorage Hotel. The Hilton Anchorage Hotel is considered to be a very famous place in the United States. Located in downtown Anchorage in 1916, it was first owned by Frank Reed. Many ghosts have come to stay in this hotel since the gold rush and have never left. One ghost that frequents the hotel is the first chief of police in Anchorage, who often is seen in the night hours around the hotel. The story says that he was shot during the Prohibition days with his own in the alleyway of the hotel, and was then dragged into the hotel to try to recover from his wounds, but would soon pass away there. Another ghost that is often seen roaming the hotel is a bride. Many visitors have seen her tall silhouette, dressed in white in dark hallways and mirrors throughout the hotel during the evening hours, as well as the ghost of a little boy roaming the halls of the hotel. Guests who have stayed at the hotel have reported frequent ghost sightings in various rooms such as 217, 215, 205 and 202. Over the many years, there have been so many ghost sightings at this particular hotel that the hotel even keeps a log at the front desk of all the eerie experiences that have happened to guests and workers. The hotel has truly survived the test of time after going through the 9.2 magnitude Good Friday earthquake in 1964, which is said to be the most powerful recorded earthquake in North America and the second in all of the world. But soon after this is when the paranormal accounts started flooding in. Even through all the tragedy that downtown Anchorage has gone through, this hotel has stood its ground, and in 2016 this hotel celebrated 100 years of business. Coming in at number 5, Silverbow Inn Bed and Breakfast. The Silverbow Bed and Breakfast is located in Juneau, which is the capital city of Alaska. The inn is more famously known for its bakery that was founded in 1898 by the original owner Gus Messerschmitt. This is the oldest bakery in Alaska, and some say it is the best. Although people travel from far to taste the treats and the bakers, there are reports of paranormal activity in the inn above. The original owner and founder of the inn reportedly still haunts the premises. The story goes that the owner loved his bakery and inn. He spent his whole life dedicated to creating the finest bakery. From the day it was built, he spent all of his time here. He loved welcoming the customers and ensuring everyone enjoyed their stay. Inevitably, having spent all of his time at the inn, he was here when he passed away in 1938. He was so dedicated in life, it seems his soul was tethered to the place in death. Since he passed away, guests of the bakery and inn have reported a lot of paranormal activity. The most commonly reported sighting is of Gus opening his shop early in the morning. People have seen a figure matching his description walking around the halls as he once did to prepare for his day. This is not the only thing that guests have noticed. Some people have reported knocking on their bathroom door. When they go to investigate who it is, there is no one there, but they have a feeling of being watched. Many believe this is Gus checking up on the guests. He also wanted to ensure everyone staying there was happy, and people believe this is a sign that he's still checking in on the guests today. Coming in at number 4, the Hotel Captain Cook. The Hotel Captain Cook, located in Anchorage, is notorious for its paranormal spirit, which has been nicknamed the White Lady. People often take ghost tours of the hotel, hopeful of a chance to meet this famous spirit. Although the origins of the ghost are mostly unknown, from her behavior it appears she passed away in the women's bathroom, or at least in the area which may have been home to something else before the hotel was built. The locals explain how she is bound to this place and is unable to pass on. She could possibly be cursed, as she seems distressed about her situation. Since the hotel opened, there was a lot of paranormal behavior in the area. She would break the glass of the mirrors in the ladies' bathroom or swing open the doors to scare those inside. The hotel management had to step in when one guest used the bathroom stall located at the very end of the ladies' room. While in the stall, she felt something fall around her neck and start to get tighter and tighter. The woman panicked and ran from the stall. As soon as she left the cubicle, the sensation stopped. Since then, the bathroom has been bolted shut as to stop this from happening to anyone else. She does seem to be mostly contained to this stall, but there are still paranormal happenings. Lights turn on and off on their own. No one has been hurt since the spirit was locked away, but I would still stay far away from this hotel. Unless you're looking for an angry spirit, this is a hotel that should not be on your list of destinations to visit. Although, my parents were there and it's fine, you know. They're Gucci gang. Coming in at number 3, we have the Golden North Hotel. The Skagway Golden North Hotel may look like a classic hotel located on the main street, but it has seen tragedy and has the ghosts to prove it. People say this place is haunted by a lady who passed away many years ago. She is bound to room 23 on the 3rd floor, but her presence can be felt in the area around the building. The locals tell the story of how this woman became bound to room 23. It's unknown in what year the story takes place, but it was many years ago. The woman was visiting the hotel with her husband. They visited the area so her husband could go on a gold expedition. The expedition was over a number of days to possibly weeks, and the wife was to stay at the hotel and explore the local area. The day arrived and the husband left on his expedition, leaving his wife alone. Not long after the husband had left, the woman caught pneumonia. She became sicker and sicker. There was no one in the area able to help her. She had no way to get to a local doctor with no knowledge of the area. She sadly passed away in little over a week due to her illness. When her husband returned, he was heartbroken to find his wife had passed. She had been laying in their room for weeks awaiting his return. The locals were shocked to hear what had happened, and horrified no one had heard her cries and helped her survive her ailment. Since then, she has been bound to the room. Other guests have heard sounds coming from the room which remains empty. The spirit can be heard coughing or choking. Some have said they saw her from the window of the hotel when walking around the area late at night. Some have even heard her cries for her husband. When anyone tries to investigate the room, they just find it empty and cold. The cold of the room takes over you as soon as you open the door. You can feel you are in the presence of a spirit and are overcome with sadness. Coming in at number 2, we have Independence Mine. The Independence Mine, now known as the Independence Mine State Historic Park, is the site of a former gold mining operation. It is located in Palmer, Alaska. The mining history in the area dates back to at least 1897. The mining town now sits abandoned. The operations were temporarily halted in 1950 with the plan to eventually resume operations. They were never able to resume the operations. This resulted in a well-preserved collection of mining equipment and buildings. Although weather has taken its toll, many of the buildings still stand today. As we know, with many mines, there are often accidents due to the dangerous nature of the work. Parts of the mine would often collapse. The mine is now a big tourist site as a look into the life and work of miners in 1897. The visitors have reported a lot of paranormal activity while touring the facility. Almost everyone who visits the mine sees some form of activity there. There are many apparitions that appear. They walk around the mine as if they were doing their usual day's work. Some have even seen cigar smoke coming from certain locations. You can smell and see the smoke, but there are no cigars in the area that could be making the smoke. Tour guides have noted that they often have the feeling of being followed. They can feel themselves being watched each time they tour the facility. Some have even found footprints that don't belong to them or anyone in their group. Although there is a lot of paranormal activity in the area, tourists still come to see the remains of the mining town. The ghosts seem to be well intended. They may merely be echoes through time of the souls who passed here. As far as we know, there have not been any visitors who have been hurt during their visit. I would still be wary of visiting here though. Finally, in at number 1, we have At the White House. At the White House was built in 1902 and is now on the National Historic Register due to how long it has been standing in the community. It has had many issues since it was built. It was originally built as a hospital, then it was used as a daycare center, and today is used as a hotel. Any building that was used as a historic hospital has seen a lot of tragic passings. When the building was used as a daycare center, there was a tragic fire. The building caught fire in the 1980s. It was fully restored following this. During the fire, the young woman who owned and ran the daycare was trapped inside. After ensuring all of the children were safe, she became trapped and unfortunately perished. Since the fire, her apparition has appeared around the home. Most guests believe her to be a kind spirit, but she does bring on the feeling of dread and terror when she is in your presence. Guests at the hotel have claimed to be startled awake by the young woman standing at the foot of the bed. Once they wake up and become frightened, the spirit usually disappears. Workers at the hotel claim that she appears to show more interest in families with children. She reportedly had a love for looking after children, and even in death she wanted to ensure their safety during their stay at the hotel. It is unknown what room she was trapped in during the tragic fire, but there are numerous cold spots around the hotel. Others have heard faint screams and cries coming from certain rooms. She is hailed as a hero for saving all of the children during the fire, but guests are still frightened when greeted by her ghost in the early hours of the morning.
Number 5 on this list is Tranquil Sanatorium in British Columbia. Tranquil Sanatorium has quite an extensive and tragic history to it, which has caused its walls to be the home to many undead spirits. A sanatorium, if you weren't familiar, is an establishment which has the sole purpose of housing those with long-term illnesses and is often associated with tuberculosis. The one that we're talking about right now is no different. It was built in 1907 as a facility to treat people with tuberculosis. However, it didn't stay like this for very long. The purpose of the facility eventually changed to become an insane asylum. It acted as this mental institute for a while until finally becoming abandoned in the late 1980s. Due to its deep history with death, disease, mental illness, it's no wonder that the Tranquil Sanatorium is now deeply haunted. The layout of this facility screams something out of a Stephen King book. It has several buildings that are connected by poorly lit underground tunnels. The building itself looks all too eerie from the outside as well, with dirty cream colored walls that have seen far better days as rot and mold slowly devour them. Visitors of this place report feeling extremely uneasy. A common note for most people that visit is the presence of orbs, strange balls of light that flutter throughout the building and then disappear. Some people have reported seeing a ghostly apparition on the 6th floor. This ghost takes the form of a woman not older than 30. She appears to be crying and screaming. The tunnels are said to be particularly haunted. People have reported screams coming from nowhere, flashes of movement, menacing and animalistic groans that make you feel as if somebody is right behind you. Children can also be heard playing every now and again in some of the more open areas of the building. Clearly, this place's dark history has impacted it greatly, and just because physical humans decided to abandon it in the 80s doesn't mean that it was truly abandoned for good. Number 4 on this list is the Ferguson House. The Ferguson House is part of Fort Edmonton Park, which, you guessed it, is located in Edmonton, Alberta. Fort Edmonton Park is a little tourist attraction that has buildings from 1885, 1905, and 1920 to represent the homes of the time. One of the houses is the Ferguson House. This home is interesting because during my research, I couldn't find any particular evidence of wrongdoings or tragic events at this home. In fact, for the most part, it seems like a pretty normal house. People have lived there before and no harm has befell them, but it seems that after they moved out and the home was donated, that's when things started to go a little bit haywire. There are reportedly 3 ghosts or demons that haunt this home, each one scarier and more dangerous than the next. The first one is the ghost of a beautiful floating woman who is dressed in all white. People have said that they've spotted her in the windows of the home looking out at them or slowly drifting throughout the living room. The second one is the ghost of a little boy. The boy will appear to certain people looking extremely ill. It is currently unknown if this boy died in and around the area or what disease he is suffering from, but it is said that he resides in the home with the woman in white. The third being is by far the scariest of all 3. A ventriloquist dummy that will appear in the home or in the cupboards. This thing can move all by itself and talk by itself. It is very similar to the popular horror franchise Chucky, and it's said by some to be seeking to harm the living. I'm not sure if the ghost of the ventriloquist has taken over this dummy or if the dummy has taken on its own persona, but I definitely do not want to go anywhere where the primary residence is a demon puppet. Number 3 on this list is the 5 Fisherman restaurant. This is a restaurant in Halifax, Nova Scotia, known for its exceptional oysters and also its ghostly inhabitants. The ground that this restaurant sits on wasn't always utilized for serving up fish and chips though. In fact, it has a very long history. In the early 1800s is when the building went up, and for a long time it acted as the town's only school. Nothing ghoulish or demonic about that. However, at around the turn of the century, the school moved and the building took on a new purpose. It became the mortuary for Halifax and made its dealings with the dead. Now, not every mortuary is going to become haunted, but this one had quite a lot to deal with over the years. In 1912, the unsinkable ship, the Titanic, sunk. It sunk roughly 640 kilometers off of the eastern shores of Canada, and therefore the closest places to assist with the rescue was these eastern provinces. Halifax acted as the leader in these rescue processes, and because of that, the mortuary had an onslaught of bodies of people whom had died on the ship. 5 years after that tragedy, Halifax incurred one of their own with the massive Halifax explosion. This was where a munitions ship exploded and it killed roughly 2,000 people just like that. This mortuary served as the primary designation for both of these incidents, and due to the unnatural deaths here, it makes sense that some spirits have clung on. Guests and employees alike have reported seeing ghosts all over this mortuary that turned restaurant. One of the dishwashers reported running out of the restaurant when he looked up from what he was doing and was staring directly at a ghost-like specter. The restaurant has attempted to have serious renovations done. However, I don't think that any amount of structural changes will get these spirits to rest for good. Number 2 on this list is the Frank Slide. Now, even though the Frank Slide sounds like it could be a fun, popular dance move that takes over TikTok for a few weeks, it is far more morbid than that. On April 29th in 1903 in the mining town of Frank, which at that time was part of the Northwest Territories but is now a section of Alberta, there was a horrible tragedy. 110 million tons of limestone and rock came tumbling down in one of Canada's biggest landslides ever. This fell onto part of the town of Frank. Frank was located right next to Turtle Mountain, which after extensive mining had grown unstable. On April 29th, it all came crashing down and claimed the lives of 70 to 90 people. It is still to this day Canada's most deadly landslide to ever occur in history, and was a horrible tragedy that can only remind us how fleeting life can be. I think the craziest part about this landslide as well is that it wasn't just miners who were killed. Their wives, their families, all of them died at the hands of the Frank slide. The remains of these bodies were never recovered either, as the damage from the slide was far too devastating. Where all of this happened is now a section of a town called Crow's Nest Pass, and over a century later, the ghosts of the dead still haunt the area. This place is somewhere where visitors have reported feeling very unsafe. They say that the overall feelings of uneasiness are almost too much to bear and that they have to leave. Cries, howls, screams, this can all be heard late at night as you're trying to sleep. Lanterns will be seen in the night walking around at the hands of unknown apparitions. It is basically a full ghost town of people who never deserved to die in the first place, all wanting to get a second just to feel their lives again as they were so unfairly ripped away from them. Definitely one of Canada's most horrific tragedies, and now home to one of its most haunted locations. Number 1 on this list is the Banff Springs Hotel. This hotel is located in Banff, Alberta, and is truly one of the creepiest places that I've ever read about. Now, first off, I want to note the hotel itself looks gorgeous on the outside. The beautiful nature it is surrounded by is stunning, and the hotel gives me some serious Harry Potter Hogwarts vibes. However, when I say that this place is surrounded by nature, I really mean it. It is totally out on its own, with no other buildings in sight at all. The secluded site has been around for 132 years and has housed its fair share of visitors. Some of these visitors have had some incredible stays. I mean, when you look it up online, the hotel has a 4.7 Google rating, so I mean, it's pretty freaking good. Some of the guests, though, they never checked out. In the 1920s, a couple was set to have their wedding at this hotel. On the day of the ceremony, though, the bride, while she was walking down one of the hotel's beautiful marble staircases, tripped and fell, smacking her head on her descent and dying on the spot. This bride's spirit is one of the most notable sightings people have had when they're staying at this hotel. It's said that they often see a phantom in a wedding dress ascending and descending the stairs very quickly. She's also been seen in the ballroom dancing alone, potentially dreaming of the dance that she wanted so desperately to have with the husband that she never got to marry. In 1975, a longtime bellman of the hotel, Sam, died there. Since then, sightings of Sam have been pretty consistent. One story details how 2 women lost their room key and called the front desk to go and get it. The front desk person sent someone to go and open their room for these ladies. When that person had got there, though, the ladies were already in the room and said that another bellman had let them in. They described Sam to a T when they spoke about the bellman who helped them out. Instances like this have occurred time and time again at the hotel, with many people believing his spirit is still working there. Finally, with this hotel, you have room 873. Room 873 is rumored to be the home of a gruesome murder. One evening, a family was staying there, and the father, for some unknown reason, lost his mind, murdering his family and himself. After completely refurbishing the room, the hotel put it back in service, but now people who have stayed there report hearing the screams and the cries as if they were still dying. If you have to stay at this hotel, definitely avoid room 873. Number 5 on this list is Abbey de Mor. This abbey is located in the French town of Mortimer in the Normandy region and has a deep history to it. In the mid-1500s, this was a prosperous area filled with a bunch of monks. It was a growing town that was one of the most successful in the region. This didn't last too long though. When the 1700s struck, things changed quickly. The men who were funding this town grew greedy and cared little for the people that were living there. The abbey itself started to deteriorate and the monks began moving out. Soon it was a shell of its former self and only had 4 monks that it housed. This wasn't the end though, because in 1789 this abbey saw the worst horror of its history. The French Revolution was at its height and sweeping its way through France. Religion was completely out of favor, and that meant the 4 monks that were living there were also out of favor. When the revolutionaries got to this location and found these monks, They didn't hold back. They took them into the cellar of this abbey and brutally massacred all 4 of them with no provocation. People think that this was one of the main incidents that caused this place to become one with the spirits. Since then, many ghostly sightings have been reported at this spot. One of the most famous stories was in World War II. A British paratrooper landed in the forest nearby and was spotted by the Germans. He thought he was doomed for until a monk appeared out of nowhere and guided him to safety. It's believed that this is one of the spirits of the dead monks still trying to help those in desperate need. One of the most famous ghostly legends is the woman in white who wanders the grounds. This ethereal being floats through the area and was even photographed once before. Her origin is currently unknown, but it seems that after the monks were killed, this area became home to not only their spirits, but many. Werewolves, goblin cats, and other demonic things have also been spotted here. This place is deeply haunted, and even though that one paratrooper was saved by a ghost, I think that's the exception rather than the rule, and for that reason, I still wouldn't recommend going here. Number 4 on this list is the Chateau de Brissac. This chateau in France is located in the Loire River Valley south of the village of Anchorage in France. It's a very beautiful chateau and extremely unique because it's actually a mix of 2 different chateaus. In the early 11th century, an initial castle was built on the land, but then several hundred years later, in the 15th century, the land was taken over by the Duke of Brissac, who had his own vision for the space. He tore down most of the castle except for the twin medieval towers and then built around those, so you get this very interesting style of chateau. This chateau is also apparently the tallest in all of France. The great beauty of this castle and unique architecture aren't the only things that distinguish it though, because it's also one of the most haunted. An expert on the castle named Wesley McDermott gives great insight into the entity haunting this building, where he says, "A double murder that occurred sometime in the 15th century within the walls of the castle has resulted in one of the more popular ghosts of the Chateau de Brissac, that of the La Dame Verte, or Green Lady. The current residents, the Duke of Brissac and his family, have become accustomed to her roaming the rooms, but she has scared many a guest. She's often seen in the tower room of the chapelle wearing her green dress. What's most terrifying, however, is her face. If she looks at you, you'll see that her face has gaping holes where her eyes and her nose should be, resembling a corpse. As well as her sighting, her moans are often heard throughout the castle in the early hours." After researching this, I found that Wesley was correct, and there is no end to the stories and encounters people have had with this green lady. I honestly do recommend going to this castle to look at its beautiful exterior. Going inside, though, is something that I wouldn't do. Number 3 on this list is Grès-les-Bains. This is a commune that is in the southeastern part of France. The reason why this town is so haunted is because of all the conflicts that have taken place there over the years. If you name any significant war that has happened within France, it's most likely that at some point or another, a battle was fought at this place. This has caused a lot of untimely death of soldiers and also the civilians who were living there. All of this death has left some spirits behind and made it so that this town is deeply haunted. Even though this is a town, the area that is most haunted seems to be located close to the castle at the top of this town. The reason that I say at the top is because this is a mountaintop village, and the way that this town is laid out has the castle right at the zenith. Therefore, everything is cascading down from this haunted castle that towers over the rest of the residents. There isn't one ghost who lays a rule to this town, but a collection of ghostly spirits. It's said that if you walk around the castle at nighttime, then many voices will start to speak out of thin air. Shadows will dance on the walls as if someone is around you, but once again there'll be nothing. People also report having a deep sense of uneasiness when they're in this area and feel unwanted. The ghosts here don't sound as dangerous as some of the other ones, but I still don't recommend checking this place out. Number 2 on this list is Chateau de Blende Lor. This is a castle that is located directly in the village of Blende Lor. This castle certainly isn't the most ornate in nature. It looks to prioritize functionality over beauty. This was largely because its main use was during the 100 Years' War, and the French wanted to make sure it wouldn't get captured by the British. This castle is very unique with its haunting. It's always haunted by one specific ghost, which I'm going to get into, but on one particular day of the year, this place goes off the rails with paranormal activity, and it's this event that has given the castle the title as the most haunted castle in all of France. At midnight on All Saints' Day, which is on November the 1st, it's said that a plethora of phantoms will fly out and circle around the tower of this castle. They will scream and wail and cause a major ruckus. People have also said that these wailings feel inherently sinister in nature, almost as if these ghosts are driving people away from this place. Reports have also said that chains can be heard smashing against the walls, and screams from below in the tower are heard as if people are locked up there. This event only takes place on November 1st at midnight though, and is now part of the lore and culture around this village. On a regular day, this castle isn't completely without ghostly apparitions though. The ghost of the master of the castle from the 11th century walks throughout in a bloodied outfit. It's said that he was murdered with a dagger and that his spirit walks around to this day still holding that same dagger which killed him. Number 1 on this list is Chateau de Bagil. This castle is located in the Saint-Front-sur-la-Masse and was built in the medieval ages. It's decently well kept considering how old it is today. As with most castles that were built around that time, this one played a critical role in the 100 Years' War. It's said that it was fought over multiple times and retaken by both sides multiple times as well. Aside from its deep history, reports of a potential haunting have run rampant all throughout France. In fact, people were so convinced that a spiritual presence was living here that a team went to go investigate it. This group of paranormal experts went in and made some startling discoveries. They said that when they got there, the thing that they noticed and detected the most was the sensation of somebody touching their shoulder, as if somebody was right behind you and had their hand just on one of your shoulders. This went hand in hand with a sensation of burning. Apparently the burning didn't have them in pure agony, but they were all reportedly uncomfortable for sure. The temperature changes didn't stop there either, because it also got incredibly cold all of a sudden. Creepy noises, loud shouts, and a very guttural and deep moan that echoed throughout the castle were all things that this group had reported as well. Nobody knows who or what ghostly spirit is causing these occurrences, but it's clear that something isn't quite right about this French chateau. Number 5 on this list is the Chateau de Kamar. The Chateau de Kamar is located in Périgord, an ancient region of France. The chateau isn't as beautiful as it once was, some of its former glory lost to time and also to war. This chateau was a critical point of interest in the 100 Years' War between France and Britain. It was the host to one of the more brutal fights that the war ever saw and was eventually captured by the British. As was typical back then, when you captured a place, many of the people that were running that place were either captured or put to death. One person of interest was put to death by being beheaded, and that was the young lover of the daughter of the Earl of Kamar. It's said that this man was deeply in love with the daughter and that she was in love with him as well. His beheading didn't seem like a major point of interest to the British at the time, but it actually left a bit of a spirit behind. What's really interesting about this story though is that it wasn't the spirit of this young man that was left behind, it also wasn't the spirit of the young daughter or even the Earl of Camargue himself. In fact, it was the spirit of this young man's horse. The horse that this young man rode into battle with to attempt to defend the chateau, and the horse that he had his whole life. Its ghost has yet to pass on. It's said that the ghost of this horse wanders the grounds of the chateau searching for its master. People who have ventured into the castle have reported hearing the clicking of hooves and a deep groan from a horse. People have also reported seeing this dead horse's ghost walking around the grounds of the chateau as if it was defending it from potential invaders like it did in the past. It's suggested that if you do intend to visit this chateau, that you don't bring any negative energy with you. The horse could potentially interpret this as a threat and come after you. Some have even suggested bringing a carrot or an apple and leaving it at the front of the chateau as a sign of good faith towards this ghostly steed. Number 4 on this list is the Palace des Tuileries. The Palace des Tuileries is home to one of France's most known ghosts who has been nicknamed the Red Man. The Red Man has been around for several hundred years and has 2 potential stories of origin. The first story talks about a man nicknamed Jack the Skinner worked for Catherine de Medici after her husband Henry II died. He worked as a hitman for her and would be sent to murder potential political foes. He was exceptional at his work, but eventually there grew a time where the Queen was worried that he knew too much about her. After all, he knew exactly how many people she had had executed, considering he had done the executing. To make sure her secrets were safe, she had another man murder him. He killed him in the garden, which I should note is typically the area linked to this haunting, and then he left his body in said garden. When he came back to fetch the corpse, it was missing. Then, the Queen's astrologist told her that he foretold some great disaster happening to the people of Tuileries and that John would be at the forefront of it. Since then, whenever the Red Man appears, it's said that a tragic event will happen to the people surrounding his appearance. The second origin story is that when this palace was built, the Red Man was already there. This ghost spoke to Catherine de' Medici and foretold her death, and even though she forsook him and the palace that she had built, the prediction he had made turned out to eventually be true. Pierre-Jean de Beranger, a famous French poet, describes the Red Man as being a small man clothed from top to toe in scarlet, whose eye is so piercing and unearthly that it terrifies the most courageous. He never speaks, nor are his visits of much length. He vanishes soon after his presence is discovered. This has been echoed throughout time, as many French nobles have received visits from the Red Man before. Henry IV, Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette have all had visits from him in the past. There's even a story talking about how the Red Man appeared in front of Napoleon right before his death. There are tons of beautiful palaces in France, and if it was me, I'd avoid this one and go to one of them. Better to be safe than sorry when we're dealing with a devil-like demon whose presence means impending doom. Number 3 on this list is the Rue de Chantre. This is considered by most to be the most haunted streets in France. It's located in Paris on the island and is right next to the Notre Dame Cathedral. This street is said to be haunted by the ghosts of many children. As with most ghost stories, this didn't come out of thin air, but from a horrible tragedy that took place on this street just over 100 years ago. In the early 1900s, there was a hotel that was located on this street. This hotel didn't really act as a hotel though, because during that time there was a massive outbreak of tuberculosis. The children in the area who had come down with the disease were sent to this hotel to quarantine. They were locked in the bedrooms of this hotel and couldn't leave at any point for risk of infecting other people. Some children died during these quarantines, which is already bad, but the main tragedy happened roughly a decade later in 1910. In 1910, there was a great flood of Paris where the River Seine overflowed and flooded the city. All the children that were currently locked inside their bedrooms at this time drowned during that flood. Nobody knows for sure the exact number of children who died in this tragedy, but it was certainly enough to make a spiritual imprint on the street. Now their souls go without rest and live along this street. People have heard the laughter and also the crying of children. They have heard the muffled screams as if they're screaming through water. They've also seen these children before peering out at them from around corners, looking extremely sad and lonely. The spot acts as an attraction for supernatural hunters, but a landmark that I wouldn't recommend visiting. Number 2 on this list is Mont Saint-Michel. Mont Saint-Michel is one of the most beautiful and unique castles on the entire planet, in my opinion. How it's constructed and where it's located, it almost doesn't even seem like something out of real life. This castle is located off of the Normandy coast, and the only connection that it has to France is a road that goes underwater when it's high tide. How this place got made has a bit of a supernatural story to it. Apparently, the archangel Michael appeared to Saint Aubert in a dream and told him to start building here. When he resisted, Michael burned a hole right in his head. After this incident, the castle began its construction, and it took quite a while to become the beauty that we have today. It was a work in progress, with more things being added over the years. Now, because of this castle's location directly in the water, it is extremely hard to attack and was never captured during the 100 Years' War. During said war, one of the major commanders of this castle was Louis d'Estourville. His ghost is one of the most common sightings at this place. He apparently is responsible for the killing of thousands of English soldiers and had battles that were so deadly the water around them would turn red with blood. He's said to patrol the castle and act as a watchman of sorts for intruders and people posing a threat. Similar to our previous entry of the horse, one of his main objectives is to keep the castle safe. He isn't the only ghost at this spot though. The ghosts of monks can also be seen praying and meditating at this location. For a long time, this castle housed several hundred monks until they were ultimately kicked out from the space. Their spirits still linger in this place though, although they aren't nearly as frightening as the weathered war general, in my opinion. Number 1 on this list is the Paris Catacombs. The Paris Catacombs is unlike anything else on the entire planet and is the breeding ground for scary stories. These catacombs are a collection of tunnels that are underneath the city of Paris and stretch for over 2,000 acres. The tunnels act as an underground cemetery where they house over 6 million dead bodies. This is one of the largest collections of the dead in the entire world, and if that wasn't enough, you can actually see their skulls as they all line the walls. These catacombs are extremely difficult to navigate.
Seeing as there are over 2,000 acres of them and it's underground, people have reported getting extremely lost when they're trying to explore them. This is part of the reason why only a portion of them are open to the public today. But all of this has led to a plethora of ghost stories and legends over the years. For instance, in 2004, a group of police officers were investigating an area of the catacombs that was closed to the public, and they came upon something unexpected. A bar, a living room, a workshop, and a meeting area for over 20 people, they were all found. This was alongside a PA system, a camera system recording the area, and a pirated means of electricity. All of this was more than suspicious, but when the officers returned a few days later with some more people, everything was gone, except for a note that read, "Don't search." This isn't all there is to the catacombs though. In the 1990s, a group was searching through them and found a video camera lying on the ground. They picked it up and examined it and saw that there was a recording. The recording was clearly of a man who was very lost in the catacombs and extremely frantic. Scary voices could be heard in the background, and the heavy breathing of this man indicated his panic. Finally, the camera fell to the ground and we could hear the man scream. These are just two of the more famous stories to come from these catacombs, but so many other ones of ghosts or demons haunting the area have come from this place. If you were to ever go here, then make sure you have a strong sense of direction and a flashlight, because the last thing you would want is to get lost in an underground haunted graveyard.
In at number 5 we have Delphis Cave. Delphis Cave is one of the most famous and well-known haunted caves in the world, and tourists and locals visit often to try and come in contact with the paranormal spirits that haunt the cave. It's located in Penteli, a mountain to the north of Athens, Greece, and has been around since the 5th century. Back then it was used as a marble quarry by the builders of the Acropolis, and the cave was actually discovered by accident during work for the extraction of marble. During the Middle Ages it was used by Orthodox Christian hermits, and later on a small church was built at the entrance of the cave, featuring an unusual double layout, one part devoted to Saint Spyridon and one to Saint Nicholas. It was used as a place of worship for the followers of Pan and the nymphs. It is also believed to have been, and still could possibly be, used by other religious groups, mainly occultists. The cave got its name from a belief that an infamous 19th century thief and robber named Delphis used the cave as a hideout, and legend has it that he hid his treasures inside the cave, and over the years many people have come to try and find his fortune. Many times throughout history the cave has been used as a shelter for civilians, and in 1977 construction work started on the cave, and it's unclear who was behind it. Many believe it might have been the works of the government wanting to use the cave and surrounding areas for the US and Greek army. The cave has been associated with various paranormal activity and ghost sightings since the ancient times, this being the main reason it's being used for a place of worship. The mystical character of the cave continues to fascinate people to this day, and dozens of urban legends are connected to the cave. There are numerous tales of people experiencing strange and abnormal activity that has taken place in and around the cave. Stories tell of electronics that stop working, water flowing the wrong way, and disappearances of explorers who enter the cave to never emerge again. Also, details such as a small handprint near the entrance furthers the mystery of this place. In at number 4, the Necromantian. The Necromantian was an ancient Greek temple built and dedicated to the god and goddess of the underworld. The Necromantian was an ancient Greek temple built and dedicated to the god and goddess of the underworld, Hades and Persephone. According to tradition, it was located on the banks of Acheron River in Epirus, near the ancient city of Ephria. This site was believed to be the door to Hades, the realm of the dead. The word Necromantian means oracle of the dead, and the faithful came here to talk to their dead ancestors. Other temples were known to house oracles of the dead, but the Necromantian of Ephria was the most important. It belonged to the Thesprotians, the local Epirot Greek tribe, and they would participate in rituals involving elaborate ceremonies where they would seek to speak to the dead. The people would eat specific foods like pork, bread, and oysters, said to cleanse the body, and would proceed to sacrifice a sheep, and the faithful would descend through a series of meandering corridors, leaving offerings to the people as they passed through the iron gates. The celebrants would then witness the priest arise from the floor and fly throughout the temple, said to be possessed by the souls of the dead. The Necromantian was also described as the entrance by which Odysseus made his Nekia, which is the ancient Greek cult practice, and is a rite by which ghosts were called up by the Greeks and questioned about the future. This temple was believed by many to be the final resting spot. Once they passed on and their bodies decayed into the earth, their spirits were released, and the Necromantian was the final resting place for the dead. Many locals and tourists come to try try and communicate with the dead. There is an abundance of paranormal activity in this place, and it is known as an entryway to the underworld and is one of the only direct channels on Earth for the souls of the underworld to come and communicate with humans. In at number 3 we have Salem Mansion. The Salem Mansion is a dark, mysterious and eerie abandoned mansion located in Thessaloniki. The villa was designed in 1878 by Xenophon Paeonidis, who was known to be the most famous Greek architect in Thessaloniki. The mansion was bought in 1894 by Emmanuel Salem, who was the most important lawyer in the city and an eminent member of the Jewish community. It remained in the family for over 20 years, and the family gave its famous name the Salem Mansion. During World War I, the villa had changed hands after the Salem family left in 1915, and it became the consulate of the Austro-Hungarian Empire for more than half a century. In 1978, the mansion was damaged extensively by an earthquake that devastated Thessaloniki. To this day, the house still belongs to the Italian state but remains deserted. There have been many plans to restore the villa, but for some reason it has yet to be done. This mansion is a very mysterious place, and even just looking at it you can sense the fear and horror. There are many legends about the place, and many paranormal investigators visit this infamous place to try and communicate with whatever horrific beings haunt the mansion. Many people speak of when they have visited the place that they felt cold air around them, even in the middle of summer, hearing doors close out of nowhere and hearing steps all throughout the house. Locals have mentioned that they stay away from this sinister house due to all the stories and sightings that have happened here. Many think it's cursed and stay as far away as they can. In 2013, the producers of the hit TV show American Horror Story used a photo of the Salem Mansion for one of the posters promoting the new season because of its haunting appearance. None of the people working on the series ever mentioned the home being in Greece, and the series of the show, Coven, revolves around a group of witches and is set in New Orleans, so many believe this house is located in the United States. If you're brave enough to visit the Salem Mansion, you have to go all the way to Greece. In at number 2 we have Kontos Mansion. The Kontos Mansion was built in 1900 for Nicholas Kontos, who was the Russian consul for Greece and lived there with his wife and 4 children. The mansion is located beside the ocean in the small village of Ano Lahonia Pelion. Nicholas was one of the most powerful men in central Greece at the time and was widely known in the Phassala area, and they owned homes in other places like Volos and Athens. The popular urban legend that surrounds the house is that it's haunted after the death of the Kontos family, who was supposedly poisoned by a dead lizard that had fallen into a jug of milk. It was later found out that the children in the family died in their early teens of tuberculosis, but the urban legend is reinforced by the funerary monument in the cemetery of Volos, which presents a table with a decanter and 3 chairs around it, each inscribed with each name of the children and the age they passed, but they all said they all died at a very young age. No one really knows the truth, so the rumors of this cursed mansion continue to this day. Another legend believes that many war soldiers also haunt the mansion. During World War II, the mansion was occupied by the Nazis, who used it as headquarters where Greek warriors were interrogated and tortured. There were many Greeks who were tortured and executed in the villa's basement. This mysterious mansion has many different stories, and these are reinforced because many other families who lived in the mansion after the Kontos fell into a lot of misfortune, as well as people who worked on the home. Many of the past owners reported hearing spine-chilling screams and cries, causing none of them to stay too long. Some of the workers who helped renovate the villa never saw end results, as many of them unexpectedly died before finishing. Many locals tend to stay away from the haunted mansion, but many tourists come to experience the haunting for themselves. But this mansion is one of many in Greece that have multiple ghost sightings inside and is truly terrifying. To this day, the Kontos Mansion stands empty and abandoned, which makes this place even scarier. And finally, in at number 1 we have Villa Kalogis. The Villa Kalogis is located in the Rafina area of Attica, which was owned by Pericles Kalogis, who was a very wealthy but disturbed man. The villa was named after him, and he stayed in the large mansion with his wife and family. The legend says that in 1910 Pericles took the life of his wife before taking his own life, and some versions tell the story of him taking the life of his whole family before taking his own life in the family home. So there are many stories of Pericles and his family haunting the home, and many have seen family members running around the home and hearing mysterious footsteps. During World War II, the home had been taken over by Nazis, who used it to imprison and torture Greeks in the cellar, who many believe haunt the cellar to this day. Years later, while attempting to demolish the home, the bulldozer being used suddenly stopped working while approaching the house, and after 2 of the workers died from sudden heart attacks, all thoughts of knocking down the home were abandoned. Another popular legend regarding the haunted mansion is that Anau accepted a bet from his friend that he couldn't last a night in the famous haunted house. Well, he did last the night, but when his friend came in the morning to check on his friend, he found him dead in the home. It's said that nothing at all is able to grow for a few meters around the building. Experts who have investigated this phenomenon found that the atmosphere surrounding the house is uncommonly high in negative ions, something that is thought to be linked to paranormal activity. This haunted villa is among one of the most haunted in all of Greece and should be avoided.
Number 5 on this list is the Buda Labyrinth. Buda Labyrinth is a series of tunnels that are all connected under Budapest. It's a naturally forming system that humans have cultivated. They've used this place for many different purposes since ancient times. Storage and shelter are right up there as being some of the biggest. They've also, however, hosted some pretty dark and disturbing things here. These tunnels have been used as torture chambers before. They've been used as a prison before, and even a dungeon back in the day. Due to some of these darker times that the tunnels have seen, it's believed that there's some residual dark energy that resides here, and the tunnels themselves are ultimately haunted. Some of the most commonly spotted spirits in these tunnels are that of 3 women. A while back, 3 female skeletons were found in the depths here. The cause of death was never fully confirmed, but it was believed by how they found them that it would have been horribly brutal. These 3 ghosts haunt this place all the time, and there are even stories about how they used to take people. They would leave the confines of these tunnels and drag unsuspecting victims down here to die. That hasn't happened for several hundred years though, so I think that we're all pretty safe in that regard. They aren't alone down here though. The souls of those who were tortured to death still linger here and oftentimes make themselves known to visitors. Disembodied voices, screams, moans, the feeling of someone's hands grazing over you as you walk past. All of these are very common occurrences down here. We've just seen it time and time again where a place sees a little bit too much darkness and hate and then becomes haunted. The Buddha Labyrinth is definitely one of those examples. Highly recommend keeping it off your itinerary if you're traveling to Hungary anytime soon. Number 4 on this list is Witch Island. Yeah, literally a place called Witch Island obviously is going to be making the list. There's an ancient legend that surrounds this island which has given it its name. It was a classic case where people were thought to be witches and were wrongly accused of such and then ultimately put to death. Let's Travel says, it might seem like a pleasant and relaxed place, but there is a creepy story following this place. Szeged was suffering from a serious drought and the locals were praying for that. Suddenly one day, rain starts with chunks of ice falling from the sky and many locals were convinced of witchcraft. For that reason, 12 people were caught believing that they were witches. They killed them, and since then, locals say that they hear desperate voices crying for help on the riverside. Apparitions are also seen super regularly. These are just normal people too, or at least that's what people think. It's pretty much common knowledge at this point that these women weren't witches at all, but just regular people. These ghosts that show up are desperate and in need, and they look really sad. They probably won't hurt you, but they'll definitely make you feel something. I'd stay away from this island if you can. Number 3 on this list is Salgotarjani Cemetery. Cemeteries are supposed to be peaceful places where the dead can pass. But sometimes that doesn't happen and they end up like this one. Deeply haunted. Orbitz writes, on the far outskirts of Budapest lies a forgotten cemetery straight out of a horror movie. The tall, imposing stone gates now face an outline set on train tracks with an eerie silence only broken a few times an hour by a passing train. A knock on the gates results in 2 large guard dogs rushing to the iron bars, jaws slapping as they attempt to ward off any unwelcome visitors. Inside the giant walls of the once magnificent cemetery are rows of impressive tombs of certainly important people of their time. This cemetery is the oldest Jewish burial ground on the pest side of the city, but fell into ruins after most of the Jewish population was forced out of the area during World War II. After a short stint as a Soviet military hangout, the forest is slowly trying to take back the land, gnawing around the massive stone and marble burial chambers. Over the years, many of the tombs have been opened and looted of anything of value. The disturbed and derelict cemetery is sure to have at least a few angered spirits still hanging around, making it a place that you may not want to visit after sunset. Angered spirits is right, guys. There are countless stories of people getting literally attacked by unknown entities that they can't defend themselves against. I imagine that these are the spirits of the individuals whose graves were robbed. That is just such a blatant act of darkness that it's bound to wake up the spirits of the dead and anger them. I'm also under the impression that some people were killed here during World War II, which most likely only adds to the haunting. The guard dogs are there for a reason, and in this case, it might actually be for our own safety. Number 2 on this list is the town of Versprum. This town is also known as the Soviet Ghost Town. Atlas Obscura says, the forest is slowly eating the crumbling buildings within the ghost town. Once a bustling Soviet military base, it now looks like an eerie post-apocalyptic wasteland. This was mainly built in the 1960s to house Soviet soldiers. It functioned like a tiny town for the soldiers and their families, forming an isolated, self-sustaining community. It had many fixtures you'd expect to see in any civilian town, like schools, a movie theater, pubs, and restaurants, though most of the base was dominated by large blocks of barracks. After the Soviet Union fell in the late 1980s, many of the residents left the base. The Hungarian Defense Forces were gradually laid off, and the nearby War Helicopter Regiment became defunct in 2004. Now the base's only visitors are curious urban explorers and the occasional airsoft players who dart and duck around many of the neglected buildings. It didn't take long for the abandoned town to begin looking like a scene from an end-of-the-world action thriller. The buildings have begun to fade and fall. Greenery creeps over the unused streets and climbs the walls of the derelict structures. Nature is reclaiming the site from civilization, slowly clutching it within its grasp. So to begin, the town is already pretty freaking creepy. However, there's been rumors of an entity that lives here as well. In the time since it's been abandoned, people believe that a beast or monster has taken up residence here. The few people who have gone here have reported the feeling of being stalked, as if something similar to a predator lives here now and it's out to get them. Talks of a potential werewolf have been thrown out there as well, which I can honestly believe. Whatever this creature is, it's dangerous. Stay away from this town at all costs. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Isvantelic Train Yard. This is an abandoned trade yard where old cars rot away. Some of these cars rotting here, though, have seen their fair share of horrors. Atlas Obscura says, more than 100 locomotives and train cars rot away, some in deteriorating depots, others out in the field. Among these are some very rare train engines and a few cars that are said to have transported prisoners to Auschwitz during the Holocaust. Built at the beginning of the 20th century as a repair yard for the National Railway, only a few southern parts of the train yard are still in use, while most of it is abandoned. 2 large depots, a few smaller sheds, and open-air areas are scattered with locomotives and rail cars, some of them very ancient, others more recent, from Hungary's time as part of the Soviet regime. Some of the trains were brought here to be repaired and then were to be put to the Budapest Railway Museum, but never made it to the display and were instead left behind in the train yard. Now, one big reason that they never made it is because these cars are haunted, guys. The literal car that went to Auschwitz. Just think how many horrors that tiny box has seen. The souls of those who were forced in there still linger, and this train yard is haunted because of it. I feel for these souls too. They never asked for this, and now they've just been forgotten by the world. Hopefully, one day, they can find rest.
In at number 5 we have Whispers Estate. The Whispers Estate was built around 1894, and between 1899 and 1901 is when Dr. George and Sarah White moved in. George was a successful physician and ran his practice from their home. The two adopted many orphaned children, and unfortunately several passed away in the house over the years. Some of the children they took in were troubled. Many of them passed away in the bedrooms and other areas of the home, and even some of Dr. White's patients have been said to have also passed while in the home. Dr. White practiced in the home for over 25 years, so it's probable but unknown how many over the years had passed in the home. In the early 2000s, the home underwent renovations and a lot of bizarre activity began. Many claim that lights would flicker on and off, footsteps would be heard stomping around on the second floor, and as time went on, the activity escalated. To this day, people reserve time to come and experience all this paranormal activity, and are encouraged to write down any experiences they had while in the home, and these accounts are posted to the Whispers Estate's official Facebook page. You can go through the page and find creepy photos people have taken that show demonic figures, ghost-like creatures, and even orbs. It's also pretty common for the guests to be scratched up by unseen fingernails or touched by an unseen hand. The estate earned the Whispers moniker after the numerous guests that experienced somebody whispering in their ear, somebody they couldn't see. Due to the amount of people who had passed at the home in its early days, it's like there are a number of different spirits that haunt the estate to this day. The Whispers Estate is known as the 4th most haunted house in the United States, but many who have visited believe it to be the most haunted house in the entire country. In at number 4 we have Rhodes Hotel. The Rhodes Hotel was established in 1893 and was named after the first owners, Clara and Newton Rhodes. The youngest child in the Rhodes family, Everett, passed in one of the second-story bedrooms after contracting tuberculosis at 18 years old. Soon after their daughter's death, Newton unfortunately died, and it's believed he had died inside of the house. After Newton's passing, Clara turned the house into a dual brothel and speakeasy. It's said that one of the ladies of the night, Sarah, still haunts her bedroom tucked behind the stairs on the second floor. After Clara's death, the family home was opened as a hotel in the late 1800s and was meant to house those flocking to East Central Indiana during the natural gas boom. It's even believed that John Dillinger and Al Capone stopped at the hotel for a stay after hitching a ride on a train to Indiana. Not only did the family pass in their home, but a preacher by the name of Lester Poor supposedly hanged himself in the attic during the time when the home was converted to a hotel. But many believe his death could have been a murder. Due to the hotel's rich history, many locals and visitors have experienced paranormal activity, and everyone in the town knew that many spirits that passed in the building still haunt it to this day. The hotel closed its doors in 1937 and the property remained in the Rhodes family hands but sat empty for more than 30 years. The hotel and its contents were eventually auctioned off and it landed on the National Register of Historic Places, and the hotel saw 3 owners before the Haleys took it over for restoration. The Rhodes Hotel was purchased by Clint and Linda Haley in 1995, and they heard rumors about the haunting of the hotel, but this didn't faze them. They were more worried about the work they'd have to do to restore the home. The Haleys claim that they didn't encounter any paranormal activity, but many find that hard to believe. The hotel was up for sale again in 2017 when a man by the name of Couch took it over for his charity. Couch had launched the Lost Limbs Foundation 4 years earlier, which raised funds for prosthetic limbs for children. To this day, Couch's charity has owned and run the hotel. Not only had it been named among Indiana's most haunted places, but the hotel is consistently booked for private and paranormal investigations. The overnight investigation tickets can get up to $200, and this hotel attracts people from across the country. There have been many investigators that believe there is extensive activity in this old hotel, and people have captured a figure-like shadow moving across the living room curtains with the use of night vision cameras. Most commonly, people hear whispers and the second floor creaking when no one is inside. Unlike the Haleys, Couch said he's seen and heard supernatural happenings in the hotel since moving onto the property in 2017. He's heard footsteps on the staircase, the property camera has turned off randomly, and picked up voices before the footage flickers back on. Once, while hosting an investigation, Couch said he witnessed one of many Victorian dolls left behind from a previous owner jump off of its chair. In at number 3 we have Avon Bridge. The Avon Bridge is known to be haunted by almost every local living in the area. It is a massive trip-arch railroad trestle spinning a rural road over White Lick Creek. The bridge is a fascinating landmark in Hendricks County with lots of legends and history surrounding it, some more sinister than others. There are a few historical facts about the bridge that we do know. It was built in 1906 off County Road 625, was designed by W.M. Dunn, and is still used today. Many haunted stories surround this bridge and the area surrounding it. One story claims that a mother had been walking on the tracks and fell to her death. The mother's wailing could be heard when you drive under the bridge. It's common for many locals to honk when driving under the bridge in an effort to muffle her screams. Another story is that a drunk rail worker slipped during construction and was buried alive in the wet cement. The tale is that when a train goes over the bridge, people claim to still hear his moaning. Many locals say that if you go near the bridge at night, you will hear moaning and can see a ghostly figure of a ghost, or even 2 or 3 at a time. If you're traveling near the bridge on a hot summer day, you may be witness to the ghost tears streaming down the concrete. Many people don't even refer to it as the Avon Bridge. It's often called the Haunted Avon Bridge because of the number of accounts of ghost sightings and constant sounds of the moans and screams heard from the ghosts that haunt the bridge. In at number 2 we have James Allison Mansion. The James Allison Mansion was built for James Allison, and it was a dream home, done in a grand design and style that exhibited James's wealth and importance. James was an important figure in the auto and plane industry, greatly helping in the development of cars and airplanes. He founded the Presto Light Company, which produced the first efficient headlight for early automobiles, and was a founding partner in Carl Fisher's Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He also started Allison Engineering Company, which evolved and transformed into an aircraft engine make known today as the Allison division of Rolls-Royce. James purchased the 65-acre estate, and he and his wife Sarah built this glorious mansion, starting construction in 1911 and finishing in 1913. The massive home had an elevator, a billiard room, an indoor pool in the basement, a breakfast room, a library, a grand kitchen, and even pumped-in ice water. 15 years after the Allisons built their forever home, home, James then fell in love with his secretary, and he divorced his wife Sarah in 1928. Only a month later, James married this former employee, Lucille Musset. However, James contracted a fatal case of pneumonia and died shortly after marrying his second wife at the age of 56. In 1936, the estate went up for sale, and that same year it was bought by Sisters of St. Francis of Oldenburg. The former Allison home became a home for the college's library, administrative offices, classrooms, and sleeping quarters for the sisters. There have been many things seen and heard throughout the years since it became a college. There was a girl who had drowned in the pool in the basement, and James's untimely death in the home. Both people could be haunting this mansion to this day. It's said that people who pass through a sudden accident or a bout of illness, sometimes their spirits hang around, perhaps unaware that they have died or not wanting to accept their deaths, and this is the case for both the little girl and James. The entity of a little girl is often seen throughout the mansion. There are strange cries that are heard from the basement, in the attic, and objects seem to move by themselves and can completely disappear. There is another entity seen and could possibly be more than one, and they like to take keys and objects and move them to odd places. The library in particular is often completely rearranged, like the books and furniture. And finally, in at number 1 we have French Lick Springs Hotel. Nestled in the small resort town of French Lick sits the massive French Lick Springs Hotel. This legendary hotel was constructed in 1845 and is a crown jewel of the southern Indiana town, but there's more to this resort than meets the eye. This Indiana hotel is known to be one of the most haunted places in the state. Thomas Taggart was a mayor at the time and purchased the hotel in 1888. After purchasing the hotel, he added luxurious furnishings, marble floors, and built 2 championship golf courses. During this time, Taggart became the Democratic National Chairman, and the hotel became the unofficial headquarters of the Democratic National Party. In 1931, Franklin Roosevelt visited the hotel because of its Democratic standing and won the presidency a mere year later. Over the years, the hotel and the work Taggart put into it made it one of the most prominent hotels in the area, and even ran the West Baden Springs Hotel out of the business. Unfortunately, in 1916, Taggart passed away, but according to local legend, his spirit has never left the building. Taggart died in 1916, but that hasn't stopped rumors of sightings of this famous hotel owner. Guests and employees frequently encounter strange and paranormal activity throughout the hotel, and they believe it is caused by Taggart himself. Many spot his ghostly figure near the service elevator and can pick up a strong scent of pipe tobacco. Others claim they witnessed his spirit riding down the hallway on a horse and making noise inside the ballroom. Some hear noises and others encounter his ghost, though usually both don't occur at the same time. Not only is Taggart's ghost living in the hotel, but there are also rumors of a former bellhop that lingers around the hotel. Many believe that he was a current employee until they saw old photos of him hanging on the wall, or were told no bellhops were on duty when people had encountered him. Employees and guests say that it's pretty hard not to encounter some sort of activity when you're in the hotel, and due to the vast amount of paranormal sightings are why it's considered by many to be the most haunted place in Indiana and one of the most haunted places in all of the United States. Coming in at number 5 we have Ballygally Castle. The Ballygally Castle is said to be one of the most haunted places in Ireland and is haunted by many different ghosts. The haunted castle is in the village of Ballygally in Northern Ireland and overlooks the sea at the head of Ballygally Bay. The castle was built in 1625 by James Shaw of Scotland, but now is run as a hotel. The most well-known ghost is that of Lady Isabella Shaw, or nicknamed the Ghost of Ballygally. Legend has it that her husband Lord James locked her away in a tower where she was supposedly pushed to her death. She is said to roam the halls of the castle looking for her child, who was taken away from her at birth from her cruel husband, Lord James. Many people who stay in the castle say that they are woken up throughout the night due to her knocking on their bedroom doors. The tourists often climb the spiral staircase to view the ghost room where Lady Isabella lived out her final days. In 2003, one of the managers of the hotel, Olga Henry, was once a skeptic of ghosts and paranormal activity. But after spending some time working at the hotel, she stated that she believes there is definitely something in the hotel. According to Olga, one guest was staying in one of the rooms in the tower beneath the popular ghost room, and in the middle of the night he had awoken suddenly, believing he was at home and one of his children had laid a hand on his back. He woke up and said that he could hear a child running around the room and laughing, but he couldn't see anyone around, so he ran out of the room and into the lobby. He was so terrified from what he had experienced and checked out right away and never returned to the hotel again. In December of 2003, Olga was setting up the dungeon room in the tower for guests arriving for a meal. She set up the tables neatly, then locked the room before leaving. Just before the guests were set to arrive, she went back into the room and the tables were now a mess with unfolded napkins and glasses with an unusual scum around them and were now arranged in a circle on the table. Several paranormal investigators and mediums have come to the castle to investigate over the years. A group of mediums that spent the night at the hotel had reported that they had detected more ghosts than there were guests staying at the hotel at the time. In at number 4 we have Liamonay Castle. Liamonay Castle has an extremely sinister history and is haunted by a woman known as the Red Mary. This castle was originally a basic 5-story Irish tower house which was built around 1480 by a member of the O'Brien family, who were one of the last of the High Kings of Ireland and a direct descendant of Brian Boru. In 1639, Conor O'Brien married a woman named Mary Ní Mahone, and she became one of the most famous women in Irish folklore who, due to her flaming red hair, was commonly known as Red Mary. She was born in 1615 and she was married before Conor, but her previous husband died mysteriously and she gained control of his fortune. Due to the fortune, the newlyweds built a large mansion onto the tower house. In 1651, Conor O'Brien died in battle and the Red Mary married once again and again and again. It is believed that she had been married a total of 25 times. After the Red Mary died, the castle had various occupants in later years until it fell into ruins at the end of the 18th century and lays abandoned to this day. But it's often visited by ghost hunters and paranormal investigators. It's believed that the Red Mary haunts the castle after her death to this very day. Mary was said to have a foul temper, and if her servants were to displease her, they would be hung out of one of the castle windows, the men by their necks and the women by their hair until they passed away. It's even said if the maids didn't learn to do whatever the Red Lady said, then she would injure them so heavily they would bleed. After her death, it's not known exactly where she is buried, but many think she is beside the castle, and locals and tourists claim to have seen an eerie womanly figure walking the halls of the castle, often looking out the windows, giving this castle the name of being one of the most haunted Irish castles. In at number 3 we have the Crum. Located in Northern Ireland, Crumlin Road, Gal, or so often called the Crum, is reportedly one of the most haunted places in Belfast. This former prison was built in the Victorian era and was designed by Sir Charles Lanyon in 1845. It is their only Victorian era prison remaining in Northern Ireland and was one of the most advanced prisons of its day. This prison held some of the most dangerous and mentally ill people in all of Ireland, and many prisoners passed away while staying here, and they believed to haunt the building to this day. The prison had brutal conditions and children were even held there as young as 6 for petty crimes like stealing food. This prison held executions, and the first known execution was done in 1854 to a man named Robert Henry O'Neill. It's believed over 20 people, including Robert, had been buried in unmarked graves within the grounds of the Gal. These executions were a public demonstration, were held in crowds of up to 20,000 people to watch. Later in 1901, there was an execution chamber built, and the most dangerous prisoners were sent to this notorious prison to be executed. After closing its doors in 1996, it is now used for events and conferences, and during the Halloween season, it's open to ghost hunting experiences and for paranormal investigators. This infamous prison is featured on the list of the world's most notorious historic prisons, and tourists continue to flock here due to the amount of paranormal activity and ghost sightings over the years. In at number 2 we have Malahide Castle. The Malahide Castle lies in the village of Malahide just north of Dublin and dates back to the 12th century. The estate began in 1185 when Richard Talbot was granted the lands of Malahide, and it was home to the Talbot family for 791 years until 1976. The castle was eventually inherited by the 7th Baron Talbot, and in 1973 it was passed down after his death to Rose, his sister. Then in 1976 the castle and its grounds were sold to the Irish state. Nowadays the castle is used as a concert venue, tourist attraction and banquet events. It also features a popular botanical garden, sports ground, golf course, tennis court and a children's playground. The castle's best known rooms are the Oak Room and the Great Hall, which display Talbot family history and are known to be visited often by paranormal investigators. The tragic story of a murdered jester named Puck is the most notable ghost who haunts the castle. Stories say he had fallen in love with one of the Malahide prisoners, Lady Eleanor Fitzgerald. Puck was found out when he was stabbed in the heart, ultimately dying, but with his last breath he swore to haunt the castle for all of eternity. Locals and tourists see the ghost of Puck roaming the castle grounds. It's also believed that many members of the Talbot family also haunt the castle. When in the late 1700s, 14 members of the family sat down for breakfast in the Great Hall, and then later that night all 14 people were suspiciously found dead. It is rumoured to be one of the most haunted castles in Ireland. The castle's residents, workers and visitors have all reported similar eerie happenings, and you can learn about all of the different ghost hauntings on the very popular ghost tours including Puck. And finally, in at number 1 we have Grace Neal's Bar. Not only are castles and buildings haunted in Ireland, but there is an Irish pub by the name of Grace Neal's Bar that is a popular haunted place. This Irish pub is located in County Down and was built in 1611 and is one of the oldest bars in Ireland. Originally this bar was called the King's Arms when it was first established, until it was taken over by Grace Neal. Grace spent years serving drinks to the bar goers. She was known to greet every guest with a kiss on the cheek and a hug, and she was described as having a strong spirit. It's believed by many that her ghost has stuck around the bar ever since her death in 1916. Cold spots are felt around this warm atmosphere, and some have reported seeing a ghostly figure of a Victorian-era woman wandering around the front bar. The current owners of the bar often hear sweeping noises, footsteps, and glasses and cups have fallen suddenly off the shelves for seemingly no reason. Not only is Grace the only spirit haunting the bar, staff members of the bar have regularly seen shadowy figures of men passing by in the upstairs area. Several different ghost hunters have visited the 400-year-old pub in order to try and find answers for the unexplained sighting, including medium Derek Ackera and the most haunted team. One ghost hunter, Mike Hearns, believes he had come across an evil spirit when he was investigating the bar. He stated that the anomaly appeared before him as a ball of light upstairs and was very evil and unpleasant. Spirits sucked the energy from people, and he claimed to get very out breath, and all his energy was drawn out when he was investigating the bar. Grace Neal's Bar is known to be among one of the most haunted bars in the world, and the most haunted in all of Ireland. In at number 5 we have Ross Castle. The Ross Castle is one of the most haunted places in all of Ireland. It's located on the edge of Loughliney and Killarney National Park in County Kerry. It was built in the late 15th century by the local ruling clan, the O'Donohues, then changed ownership to the McCarthys in 1580, and finally was leased out to Sir Valentine Brown. But then in 1688 they were exiled after the Glorious Revolution. The castle then became a military barracks, which remained so until the early 19th century. The Browns never came back but did build the Kenmare House near Killarney. Legend has it that Mr. O'Donoghue jumped or was sucked out of the window of the Grand Chamber at the top of the castle and disappeared into the waters of the lake along with his horse, his table, and his library. It's believed that Mr. O'Donoghue now lives in a great palace at the bottom of the lake where he keeps a close eye on his home and haunts many of the newcomers and tourists that visit the castle to this day. Another story is that in 1536, one of the owners of the castle was Richard Nugent, who was nicknamed the Black Baron, and he had a daughter named Sabina. When Sabina was on a walk along the water by her home, she encountered a man named Orwin, who was the son of an O'Reilly chieftain, who was the sworn enemy of the Black Baron. They chatted for a while and they swore to meet again. Over time they met every day in secrecy and soon fell in love, but they knew they could never be together because of the feud between their families. Sounds like Romeo and Juliet. With no hope for them in sight, they just decided to elope. One night they met again, decided to flee together, and they boarded a boat and started traveling down the lake when a storm came out of nowhere. The waves became too much for them and the boat flipped. Orwin unfortunately drowned because of this. Sabina did survive, but knowing her lover was gone, she locked herself up in the castle's tower, didn't eat or drink until she fell into a deep sleep to never wake up again and finally be with Orwin again. Sabina eventually did pass away because of this, and to this day she continues to haunt the castle. Visitors and guests make frequent encounters with her spirit, saying she is still searching for her lover so they can reunite again. And the Black Baron's presence has also been reported by visitors in and around the castle on numerous occasions. Many tourists have frequently reported waking up numerous times throughout the night, hearing sounds of doors shutting on their own and whispering noises. Few others have also said they feel an eerie presence sitting next to them while in bed. Coming in at number 4 we have Castle Leslie. Castle Leslie is a massive castle that was home to the Leslie clan, and the Castle Leslies lay on a private 1,000-acre country estate located in County Monaghan. The Leslie family has lived in the estate since 1665, when the land was purchased and given to John Leslie by King Charles II. So he moved in, and he lived in the castle with his wife Anita and family. Many tourists and guests have recalled seeing many unexplained things throughout the castle, but the Red Room in particular was the most haunted of the entire castle. It was the centre of the family life at the castle for centuries, especially because it was where Anita Leslie King gave birth to her daughter Leonie in this room. Many of the family throughout living in this castle claim to see people, hear things, and feel ghostly presence in the room. Due to so many people going in and out of the Red Room, it makes sense that it's the most haunted of all rooms in the castle. It's believed that Anita had died in the room, and you can apparently see her and John both walking around the estate trying to find each other and be together again. The castle is now used as a hotel room, and each room is named after members of the Leslie family. So if you ever want to come in contact with members of the late Leslie family, many of their ghosts are seen in their specific rooms, and you can book your stay in any room in the castle, even the Red Room. Not only is it a very popular tourist spot and a hotspot for paranormal investigators, but in 2002 it gained media attention when Sir Paul McCartney married Heather Mills in the church, which is located on the estate. Also, various members of the Churchill family have visited the castle due to family ties they have with the Leslies. In at number 3 we have Clifton Castle. Clifton Castle is located in County Galway and was built in 1818 for John Darcy, who was a local landowner and the owner of the town of Clifton. He had a castle built for him and his large family while he was busy building up the town, and it's where they all stayed for the next 2 decades. In 1839 John died and his oldest son Hyacinth inherited the estate, but everything went downhill in 1845 when famine hit. As hunger struck, the tenants of the Darcy estate gathered on the lawn of the castle to beg and plead for work or food. However, they couldn't get anything and many of them died of starvation on the castle grounds. After the family's death, many peasants moved to the remains of the castle for shelter, but many of the poor died here. It's believed that the family spirits can still be seen and heard on the property, and many of the peasants' ghosts are located in around the property as well. The castle has remained abandoned since around 1894, but remains a hotspot for tourists and paranormal investigators. Many believe to have seen ghost-like figures and hearing weird noises when they have been inside the castle. It's believed you can still see John Darcy roaming in and around the castle looking for food for himself and his family. The castle is also a popular attraction during the Halloween season because of the ghost sightings and paranormal activity. If you're brave enough to visit, you can do so and be joined by a tour guide to tell you everything about the castle, ghost sightings, and history of the Clifton Castle. In at number 2 we have Belvelly Castle. The Belvelly Castle is located in the County Cork, which is next to the small village of Belvelly. It was initially built by the Anglo-Norman Hodnet family, who were an ambitious family who arrived in Ireland during the 12th century. The Hodnet and de Barry families were in conflict at the time, and it resulted in the de Barrys and their allies, the Roaches, capturing the castle for themselves and renaming it Barrymore. Then later on, Sir Walter Raleigh gained ownership of the castle. During the 1800s, the castle fell into ruins after many years of being abandoned. It's believed that a faceless woman haunts the castle to this day, and it's Anglo-Norman Hodnet's wife, Margaret. The story says that she had an on and off relationship with a local lord named Clon Rockenby, who had asked for her hand in marriage on many occasions, but she refused. Clon was humiliated and decided to raise a small army to go to the castle and take Margaret by force. The Hodnets fought back against Clon and his men, and a standoff began for an entire year. When Clon finally was able to enter the castle, he was shocked to see the state of Margaret. She was starved and looked like a skeleton, basically, a shadow of her former self. Clon was enraged and smashed her favourite mirror to pieces. Margaret was known for her love of mirrors to remind her of her renowned beauty, and at the time mirrors were a status symbol with the wealthy. After seeing the mirror shatter, one of the Hodnets killed Clon with a sword. After these events, Margaret descended into insanity. She was said to have sought out mirrors constantly to check if her beauty had returned. Apparently there is one stone on the castle's wall which had been rubbed smooth over the years, said to be the spot where her favourite mirror used to hang. Because she never got her beauty back, she now haunts the castle after passing away, faceless, looking for mirrors around the castle. Many tourists and locals have seen the faceless woman in and around the castle walls. And finally, in at number 1 we have Charleville Castle. The Charleville Castle is a Gothic style castle and is located in County Offaly. It was built by Thomas More in 1641, and the estate was passed through the hands of Charles More, Lord Tullamore, who was the grandson of Thomas, and when he died in 1674 it went to Jane, then to Charles William Berry. The original mansion was extended into the beautiful castle it is today. Commissioned in 1798, was designed by Francis Johnston, was built between 1800 and 1812. The most famous of the ghost scene is that of the little girl named Lady Harriet, who died after a fall off a staircase in the castle. Another ghost scene is Lady Harriet's uncle Henry Walter, who died at the age of 7 from influenza. Although he died in London, his body was brought to Ireland and he was buried in the family vault. The volunteers describe Henry and Harriet as terrible twins, as these spirits seem to be very mischievous, and there is even a famous picture taken in the castle that shows a shadowy little boy. The library that is located in the castle is said to be a hotspot for paranormal activity. People who have visited the library have witnessed a dark shadowy form of an older person on the grounds coming from the door, so the children aren't the only ghosts located in the castle. The Charleville Castle has been claimed to be the most haunted building and grounds in all of Europe. It appeared on many TV shows like Most Haunted, Scariest Places on Earth, and Ghost Hunter International. It was also the location for many movies like Becoming Jane, Northanger Abbey, and The Green Knight. It's a huge haunted attraction and has been visited by many different psychics and paranormal investigators. In at number 5 we have Loftus Hall. This place may be the most haunted house in all of Ireland, and it is said to be haunted by the devil himself. Lotus Hall is a large country house located on the Hook Peninsula in County Wexford. In 1170, Raymond le Gros came to the county and built this massive castle, which was known as the Houseland Castle. The Redmond family replaced the original castle with another in about 1350. This second castle was known as the Hall, or Redmond Hall. Later in 1872, John Henry Wellington Graham Loftus undertook an extensive rebuilding of the entire mansion, adding many of the famous elements like the grand staircase, mosaic tiled floor, elaborate parquet flooring, and technical elements that hadn't been seen in houses in Ireland at the time, such as flushing toilets and blown air heating. Charles Tottenham became the lord of the manor in 1752 by marrying the Honourable Anne Loftus, a daughter of the first Viscount Loftus, and they had 6 children. However, his wife became ill and died while the girls were still young. 2 years later, Tottenham married his cousin Jane Cliff, and they lived together, along with one of Charles's daughters in Loftus Hall. One evening, Charles was resting in his home in 1775 with his second wife and daughter from his first marriage, Anne, while the Loftus family were away on business. During a storm, a ship unexpectedly arrived at the Hook Peninsula, where the mansion was located. A young man was welcomed into the mansion. Anne and the young man became very close. One night, the family and the mysterious man were in the games room playing cards, and it was then when Anne noticed the man having a cloven foot. The man went up through the roof, ultimately leading to his demise and leaving behind a large hole in the ceiling which remains today. Soon Anne became mentally ill. It's believed that the family were ashamed of Anne and locked her away in her favourite room, which was known as the tapestry room. She refused food and drink and sat with her knees under her chin looking out the tapestry room window, waiting for her mysterious stranger to return until she passed away in the tapestry room in 1775. It is said that when she died they could not straighten her body as her muscles had seized, and she was buried in the same sitting position in which she had died. After her death, everyone who had lived there says she still haunts the hall to this day. After being purchased by Aidan Quigley in 2011, this building was marketed as a haunted house that hosted guided tours of the house until 2020 when it was put on the market for sale. In at number 4 we have the Abbey of the Black Hag. The old abbey lies on a small valley about 2 miles east of the village of Shannon Golden in the townland of the Old Abbey. One of the earliest nunneries in Ireland, it is first mentioned in 1298 and was founded on land donated by John Fitz-Thomas of Conello, who had died in 1261. Remains include the abbey church with 2 small spaces adjacent, and one appears to have been a sacristy and a vaulted building to the west. There are also walls and a gate and traces of an orchard, a fish pond and a pigeon house. Modifications to the church in the 15th century saw the inclusion of an east window in the church as well as a doorway in the north. Traces of window decoration, columns and carved tombstones remain. Barrels were also located and the church plate was reportedly found in the late 18th century. It is said that the last abbess terrified the local population with her use of the black arts and sexual practices in a room to the south of the church, and is now called the Black Hag's Cell. After the closure of the abbey, the hag remained there and continued to perform her unholy acts, and it's believed she lived unusually long, which caused her ancient skin to become darker and darker over time. Another legend is regarding the Earl of Desmond, and that during his escape from one of the many battles between the Geraldines and the Butlers, the Countess was wounded by an arrow. The wound was so serious that the Earl believed the Countess had died and buried her beneath the altar in the main chapel. The Countess awoke to find herself buried alive, and when people would see a ghostly figure they went to her gravesite and they had found her finger bones had been worn out from clawing at the coffin, and it's believed her screams can still be heard to this day. In at number 3 we have Cork District Lunatic Asylum. The Cork District Lunatic Asylum opened in 1789, and by 1845 the Irish Lunatics Asylum Act allowed for appropriating the lunatic asylum in the city of Cork to the purposes of a district lunatic asylum. The legislation provided for 2 new asylums, a criminal one in Dundrum, Dublin, and then a 500-bed asylum in Cork. This building was originally in 3 separate blocks, later to be joined together in the interest of providing more accommodation. To become the longest facade of any building in the country, it opened in 1852. William Saunders Halloran was an Irish psychiatrist who worked at this asylum from the time it opened until his death, and was the author of practical observations on the causes and cure of insanity. This doctor's methods were extreme and torturous. He created something called the Halloran's chair, which rotated hysterical patients up to 100 revolutions per minute. It rarely had the desired effect. Inmates lived out their days in a state of paranoia and despair while admitted at the asylum. The horrors of this place finally ended when the asylum was closed in 1992. It stayed abandoned abandoned for many years, and locals and tourists went to visit this scary place. They claim the tortured souls still remain here, and paranormal investigators even visited and claimed to have seen both and heard voices of these tormented souls. Today the building is being converted and renovated into apartments called Atkins Hall. In at number 2 we have the Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club is located on Mount Pellier Hill in Dublin. The building gets its name because it's believed to be one of the first Freemason lodges in Ireland. Around 1725, William Connolly, who was one of the wealthiest men in Ireland at the time, built this building to be a hunting lodge. Years after the build, the roof was blown off during a storm, and locals believed it was the work of an aggressive spirit seeking vengeance on Connolly for building on their land, and that's when the story started swirling. After Connolly's death, the building was quickly sold and is said to have become a meeting place for the Irish Hellfire Club. The club was founded in 1735 by Richard Parsons, a known dabbler in black magic. The members met at locations across Dublin and were known for their immoral behaviour and debauchery involving alcohol and sex. The secrecy surrounding the club members led to speculation that they were Satanists and devil worshippers. The president of the club was named the King of Hell and dressed like Satan with horns, wings and hooves. The members were said to set a place at each meeting for the devil in the hopes that he would attend. They were also said to hold black masses in the lodge, during which cats and even servants were sacrificed. Some say the building was deliberately set on fire in order to enhance its hellish atmosphere. The best known Hellfire Club story is the one in which the devil himself appears. A stranger had joined the members at a game of cards. At some point, one of the card players dropped a card on the floor. As he bent down to retrieve it, he noticed that the stranger had cloven hooves instead of feet. Another tale concerns a young farmer, curious to find out what went on in the meetings. Climbing up Mount Pellier Hill one night, he was invited by members of the club and allowed to witness the night's activities. He was found the next morning trembling and terrified. Tradition says he spent the rest of his life unable to speak, unable even to remember his name. The Hellfire Club remains burnt out and abandoned on Montpellier Hill looking over Dublin. It is a beautiful sight on a sunny day, but make sure you leave before night. It's a beautiful sight on a sunny day, but make sure you leave before night comes, because you may come into contact with the unusual smells, ghostly apparitions or paranormal sightings. And it's said that satanic rituals are known to be done here. And finally, in at number 1 we have Leap Castle. Of the many haunted places in Ireland, Leap Castle is possibly the most notorious of all, and is one of the most well-known symbols of haunted Ireland. This place is located in Coolderry in County Offaly. There are many accounts of when the main tower was constructed, but could go back as far as 1250 CE and was built by the O'Bannon clan. The O'Bannons were the secondary chieftains of the territory and were subject to the ruling O'Carroll's clan. There are many stories of who or what haunts this place. A red lady ghost is reported to walk the halls holding a dagger, and also 2 little girls named Charlotte and Emily are reported to run up and down the spiral staircase in the mansion. A red lady ghost is reported to walk the halls holding a dagger, and also 2 girls named Charlotte and Emily are reported to run up and down the spiral staircase in the mansion. Emily passed away after she fell from the top of the castle's tower, and Charlotte can still be seen running around after her sister and calling her name. The castle was visited by paranormal investigators from shows like Most Haunted and Scariest Places on Earth. These investigators believe the castle is haunted by a sinister elemental spirit. The creature is described as being about the size of a sheep with a human face, black holes for eyes and nose, and giving off the smell of a rotting corpse. During renovation of the castle in the 1900s, workers found an oubliette behind a wall in the chapel. At the bottom of the shaft were many human skeletons on wooden spikes. When cleaned out, it took 3 cartloads to remove the bones. Today, the dungeon is now covered over in order to keep people away from it. It's believed that the O'Carrolls would drop guests through the trapdoor to be impaled on the spikes 8 feet below, and could be haunted by the people killed by the O'Carrolls. The castle describes itself as the world's most haunted house, due to the numerous amounts of spirits located here. Coming in at number 5 is the Hospital of Colorno in Parma. It's considered to be one of the most haunted places in Italy. This asylum began in 1873 and was only used for psychiatric patients, and later a hospital for the mentally ill. Later on, they had begun housing people like prostitutes, alcoholics, and even small children, deemed by society as dangerous. At first only being a temporary situation for patients, soon became their permanent home. Doctors and psychiatrists working performed experimental new treatments on the patients, like frontal lobotomies and electroshock therapy. Patients were locked away in small rooms, many forced to stay all day long like they were prisoners, many getting very claustrophobic, and people have said they can see drawings and scratch marks on the inside of the doors from past patients staying in the rooms. The hospitals were closed down down in 1979 and now remains abandoned, but the inside still has clothes, scattered documents, old wheelchairs, and blankets. The front area is completely grown over with shrubs, vines, and trees. Anyone can go and visit the asylum, and many who have gone claim they have heard doors slamming, loud thuds, sounds of water, and even seen the ghosts of patients roaming the halls. Coming in at number 4, we have Villa de Vici. Number 4 is Villa de Vici, or the Red House. Considered to be the most haunted house in all of Italy, it was commissioned by Count Felix de Vici, who was the head of the Italian National Guard. The home was built in 1854 by architect Alessandro Sedoli and was Count Felix de Vici's summer home. Unfortunately, Sedoli wasn't able to see the completion of the home due to his death during the construction of the property. Legend has it that the Count returned home to a tragedy regarding his wife and daughters, and later took his own life inside of the house. After the Count's death, his brother had taken over the property and owned it until 1938 before it was left abandoned for the next 2 decades. Popular occultist Aleister Crowley had been rumoured to spend some time at the home sometime in the 1920s. Fans and followers of Crowley soon began to visit the mansion, and some say they performed satanic rituals. A broken piano remains in the abandoned mansion, and visitors have claimed to hear it playing while they were there. Others also say ghosts roam the house to this day. Coming in at number 3, Villa Magnoni. Next on the list is another abandoned house, the Villa Magnoni, and what makes this story even creepier is not much is known about this house, like who built it or why it has become abandoned. Many attempts to sell the house have failed time and time again. It's now owned by the University of Ferrara. They wanted to turn the villa into a research lab, yet to this day nothing has been done about that. The events in the 1980s really turned this place into a very haunted attraction and gave it its infamous name of the Curse of Villa Magnoni. 4 men went to check out the abandoned villa one day and claimed to hear children's voices in the distance. They ran towards it, but nothing was there. Instead, they saw an old woman behind one of the windows screaming at them in a violent rage, telling them to leave now and to never return. The men were terrified and ran, but unfortunately they were all hit by a car, and 3 out of 4 of them lost their lives. Due to the tragedy of the guy's death, the town council of Gakona had all doors and windows of the villa walled up, but oddly enough, a week later the window the men had seen the old woman in was now open. Other tourists since then say they have heard a woman whispering threats whenever they pass the house. Coming in at number 2, we have Chateau de Morti. Our number 2 spot is given to Chateau de Morti, or more commonly known as the Chapel of the Dead. It's a small church located in central Italy. The church was built in the 11th century by the Normans in a town called Otranto. This popular horror destination got its name from the 813 casualties beheaded during the Turkish massacre of 1480. 128 Ottoman ships landed on the shores of Otranto, and their plan was to take over Italy. It was a violent and bloody attack. The Otrantians fought back, but in the end were no match for the Ottomans, who went around killing, looting, and setting fire to everything in their path. Once the massive attack was over, the Ottomans made their way to the Otranto Cathedral and found a small group of Christians and attempted to convert them to Islam. When they refused, the Ottomans began to attack and kill all the Christians in the church that day. Thankfully, 3 kings of Naples, Aragon, and Sicily recaptured southern Italy and forced the Ottomans out. In 1711, a chapel was built off the main cathedral dedicated to those killed in the attack. 18 bodies have been mummified and put on display behind the altar along with 100 skulls. This area is known as the Mummy Cemetery. If you're brave enough to go on a tour of this church, the tour guide can tell you how each of the mummies on display passed away. There is also a dungeon-like crypt you can also visit at the church filled with mummified and skeletal remains displayed. And Finally coming in at number 1, we have Poveglia Island. Poveglia Island, also known as the Island of the Ghosts or the Forbidden Island. Poveglia is a small island between Venice and Lido. This little island was used to quarantine individuals suffering from the plague and other diseases. Many individuals were there living out their final days before being burned in mass graves. If anyone in the surrounding areas were even remotely sick, they were shipped off to the island to be separated from the healthy people and left there to die. In 1922, the island was turned into a mental hospital, bringing in even more tragedy to this already harrowing place. The doctor that ran the hospital conducted many brutal experiments on the patients on the island. He believed that mental illness could be treated and cured with lobotomies, using tools such as hammers, drills, and chisels to perform these experiments. Many say the doctor eventually went mad and took his own life by jumping off the bell tower. A nurse working witnessed this and stated that the doctor survived the fall but was choked to death by a mysterious mist. Somehow the mental hospital stayed open until 1968 before it was abandoned to this day. More than 160,000 victims were cremated on this island over the years, and even today more than 50% of the soil on the island is made up of human ash. The island has remained untouched for decades, and locals and tourists are banned from visiting. Even though the island doesn't allow tourists, many paranormal groups have filmed episodes about their findings on the island. The Ghost Adventures crew spent 24 hours on the island. They experienced many things such as creepy music, weird energy, unexplainable equipment malfunctions, and when using their ghost monitors, they flew off the charts. Needless to say, this is one of the most, if not the most, creepy and haunted place in Italy, if not the world. In at number 5, we have Eldridge Hotel. The Eldridge Hotel is a historic building located in downtown Lawrence, Kansas. The building is named after Sheila Eldridge, who was a prominent anti-slavery individual who lived here in the 1800s. The building became an apartment complex in the 1970s, but there was a strong desire by the city to see it open as a hotel, and a group of investors contributed, as well as the city of Lawrence, into industrial revenue bonds to make this dream a reality. In the later 1980s, it opened as a hotel. A popular story has circulated about the hauntings in this hotel, with the locals, employees, and guests that the ghost is that of Sheila Eldridge, who haunts the halls to this day. Many claim that because the Eldridge house's original cornerstone is located in room 506, and his spirit will manifest in that room and also roam around the building. People who have stayed in this room have claimed to witness breath marks on recently cleaned mirrors, doors opening and shutting on their own, and lights turning on and off by themselves. Others claim that the hotel's elevator is also haunted by a different spirit, who is known to open and shut the elevator doors on the 5th floor. The 5th floor is said to contain a portal to the spirit world. A popular photograph was taken during the 1980s that clearly shows a ghost-like figure in the building's elevator. Many other photographers have mentioned having unexplained technical difficulties with their cameras when near the elevator. The story of the hotel and the hauntings of Eldridge was the inspiration for the movie The Demon's Shadow, and the hotel was featured in the series My Ghost Story and has been depicted in many writings. Many believe the rich history has resulted in the amount of paranormal activity. In at number 4, Midland Railroad Hotel. The Midland Railroad Hotel is known for serving the largest steak around, and if you can finish all of it, you get it for free. But it has a sinister, haunting history. It was first a popular train stop in the 1890s, then known for being the location for the movie Paper Moon, where many scenes were filmed at this hotel in 1973. Since then, it's gone through fires, the Great Depression, and plenty of renovations. It is now owned by the Wilson Foundation, has been back in business since 2003, and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Not only is this hotel known for these interesting things, it's most known now for the paranormal activity that lurks around the hotel. The most famous ghost is that of an orphan girl that haunts the 3rd floor, who knocks on doors, runs through the hallways, and even jumps on your bed, leaving little footprints. A ghost hunting team has experienced this spirit and have recorded sounds of the little girl. Another 3rd floor room is where a sheriff was said to have been lynched, and sometimes the door is unable to be unlocked even by the master key. Ghostly figures have been seen at the top of the stairs, and things in the kitchen have flown distances suddenly without being touched by anyone. There are also many ghostly figures that are seen on the staircases, and have left many to believe that the fire that took many lives back in 1902 are the results of some of these paranormal presences. The owner of the Midland Railroad Hotel, Melinda Merrill, says that there's not one employee who hasn't seen or felt something, and you can definitely feel a presence when you enter the hotel. In at number 3, we have Hotel Josephine. The Hotel Josephine is considered by many to be the most haunted hotel in Kansas. It was built in 1890, located in the city of Hilton, and is the oldest consecutive operating hotel west of the Mississippi River. The history of the hotel is rich but also very haunted. The hotel was built by A.D. Walker and was named after his daughter Josephine. When it was built, she was only 4 months old and she attended the local elementary school and graduated Kansas University. Her graduation photo is hung in the front parlor, above the antique piano, and according to the current hotel manager, Tracer Fox, her spirit is just one that is wandering the hotel. Tracer Fox has expressed his belief in the spirits when he first stayed at the hotel. He was woken up suddenly at 3:30 a.m. and his bed was moving. He figured there was an earthquake, but when nothing in the news confirmed it, he knew it was a spirit. His mother came and stayed in a room across from him and experienced the exact same thing he did with no explanation for it. They had been skeptics before these happenings, but they are both now firm believers. Other guests staying at the hotel have similar stories, as well as experiencing hearing strange sounds, laughter, footsteps, and seeing shadows. It has been expressed that spirits can be found on each floor. One of the most haunted rooms in the hotel is the Buffalo Room, where shadows are often seen and photographed in the mirrors around the room, as well as the Carrie Nation Room. According to historical documents, a woman hanged herself in the bathroom of that room, and many guests staying there have come out of the room clutching their necks and having a hard time breathing. The hotel has brought several famous guests over the years, including former US President Grover Cleveland, who stayed there in between his 2 terms as president, along with Carrie Nation, Robert Louis Stevenson, Charles Curtis, Kirstie Alley, John Sullivan, Sam Rayburn, and Harry Langdon. Due to the amount of paranormal activity and active spirits in this hotel, the hotel hosts several paranormal and haunted events throughout the year, and many ghost hunters come to Hilton to check out the more than century-old hotel. It's also been featured in many television shows, including Ghost Tours of Kansas and Haunted Rooms America. Coming in at number 2, we have McIntyre Villa. The McIntyre Villa is one of the unusual and historic houses built in the city of Atchison. It was built in 1889 for John McIntyre, a wealthy manufacturer of harnesses and saddles. He did a great deal of business with wagon trains, plying the overland trails. John McIntyre's first wife, Alice, died in 1892. He married his second wife, Anna Conlon, a widow with 3 sons, and after John's death in 1902, Anna continued living in the home until her death in 1916. During her ownership, the house was home to many of her relatives, with lots of children as well. Around 1925, Anna's brother, Judge Charles J. Conlon, a prominent Atchison lawyer, and his family made the villa their home. In 1952, the McIntyre Villa was purchased by Miss Isabel Altus, a retired professional violinist and eccentric. She lacked the financial resources to be able to restore the home, and shortly before her death, she sold the home to George Gerardi in 1969, who started to rehabilitate the old estate. Many people, past and present, who have lived in and visited the home have experienced many paranormal experiences. There have been figures being seen in windows when no one is home, lights turning on and off in the tower which doesn't have electricity, a speaker getting thrown off the counter, and boxes mysteriously moving on their own. Sounds of slamming doors throughout the night, footsteps walking down the hallway on the second floor throughout the night, the feeling of being watched, drastic temperature changes, voices, the scent of a woman's perfume, and the hunt of cigarettes. The number of encounters and confirmed hauntings seen and heard around this home is crazy, and it's considered to be one of the most active paranormal homes in all of the US. The amount of activity in this home makes it a hub for investigators, mediums, psychics, and ghost hunters. They offer ghost tours of the home, and you can stay overnight to try and encounter these spirits. And finally, in at number 1, we have Sallie House. The Sallie House is said to be the most haunted place in Kansas. This home was built in the turn of the century and is located in the city of Atchison. After being built, the home was bought by the Atchison physician who worked from his home. The front served as an office space and examination rooms, and the upstairs is where the doctor and his family lived. One day, a frantic mother arrived at the home carrying her young daughter Sally. The child had collapsed from severe abdominal pain. The doctor diagnosed appendicitis, but there was no time to delay surgery. Sally unfortunately passed away on the operating table. For years after, many believe Sally stayed to haunt the home, and the haunting grew infamous in 1993 when the house was rented to a young couple. It started when the couple's dog would growl at nothing and make even louder growls when near the upstairs nursery. Things began to take a violent turn when fires broke out in the house and a series of sinister attacks on the husband began. The former operating area would feel extremely cold, and objects would visibly move when the young man came close. He could feel scratches on his chest and abdomen, but the ghost never attacked the wife or baby. Not only did the former residents experience the paranormal activity, but locals and other visitors of the home have experienced objects moving on their own, mysterious coldness, physical touches, video and investigative equipment that stopped working, trained guide dogs refusing to enter the nursery, and unexplained scratches or bruising on their bodies during and after their visits. Psychics have visited the home, and many have confirmed the presence of spirits in the home and have even communicated with them, and many have entered as skeptics and left believers. Due to the number of experiences in the home, it's gained a lot of media coverage from television channels including A&E, the Travel Channel, the Discovery Channel, and the Sci-Fi Channel. The home is not currently occupied but holds many guided ghost tours for both daytime and even overnight visits for the ghost lovers and paranormal investigators. Beware though, because a waiver is required due to the potential for personal injury, but no serious injuries have been reported since the last tenant in 1993.
Kicking off the list at number 5. The Landmark Inn. Located in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right around Lake Superior, you'll find the Landmark Inn. Yeah, nice and cute and cozy. Come on in, take your coat off, stay a while. This fancy hotel was originally built in 1930 as a luxury accommodation for wealthy business owners from all around the United States. Sounds like a good time. Let's gather, let's talk shop around candles. These business owners would visit the Landmark to check on their business interests, all that good stuff. Though for its 100 years being open to guests, the hotel has had multiple reports of, you guessed it, ghosts and paranormal activity. It's so common at the Landmark Inn that the ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, they make trips out to the hotel quite often just to check in and be like, hey, how's it going? And they put on their gadgets and they just check in on them. They can rely on them. The hotel's 6th floor is home to one of the saddest stories the hotel has ever seen. This story takes place in the 1930s when the hotel was a new, lively social and cultural center in town. The story revolves around a ship worker who fell in love with a local librarian and conducted their love affair in the Lilac Room. Yeah, of all places, of course, let's go meet the Lilac Room. Sounds beautiful. And that was where the man was staying. Perfect place to meet. The couple was said to have a planned wedding upon his return from the last voyage on the sometimes treacherous Lake Superior. Unfortunately, their love affair ended in tragedy when his ship met with a storm and sank to the bottom of a lake. He never returned to the shore, and the librarian mourned the man in said Lilac Room, eventually dying herself of a broken heart. The heartbreaking story comes with many reports of the Lilac Room now being haunted. Yeah, rightfully so. As a large number of guests has reported hearing cries and whispers from a female. The female is also seen by many guests and workers on the 6th floor near the Lilac Room, crying and mourning for her loved one. A less romantic story that is associated with the hotel goes back to when it was even finished being built. During construction, a man ended the life of his girlfriend due to anger and jealousy, and this took place right after she told him about her past boyfriends and their relationship history, just normal stuff that he flipped out on, just a monster. And since the hotel was still being built, to conceal the evidence, the man buried her in the unfinished basement. Just horrible stuff. You knew I was going there and you're like, ah, please don't. To this day, decades later, visitors and employees report hearing cries from that basement, and some report hearing whispers from a female voice asking for them to find her body. I just got goosebumps. That's real goosebumps. No matter how much time goes by, these two women, heartbroken for different reasons, still haunt said hotel today. Number 4, Michigan Bell Telephone Building. The Bell Telephone Building can be found in downtown Grand Rapids. It's known from the legend that the building is haunted by 2 ghosts. It's always 2, eh? Always gotta have pairs. Good things come in pairs. Even demons. These spirits have consistently caused chaos throughout the buildings for years in their own unique personal way. We love it. We love a unique ghost. The spirits that haunt the Bell Building are rumored to be Warren and Virginia Randall, a couple who used to reside in the Grand Rapids. Back in 1907, they moved from Detroit and bought the Judd White Mansion in Grand Rapids, which has now been torn down and built into what we now know as the Bell Telephone Building. So a lot of history there already. Over the years of living in this new house, Warren and Virginia's relationship started to crumble as Warren became very strange and paranoid almost, creating hardships in their relationship. In 1908, Virginia became tired of Warren's strange and aggressive behavior, so she decided, I'm out of here, peace. She left him. One night, 3 years after they were separated, Warren convinced Virginia into taking a car ride with them, hoping to get back together, maybe talk it out. The two of them ended up at the Judd White House, where their verbal disagreement turned horrible, and Warren sadly took the life of Virginia. Then he proceeded to end his own life in the very same moment. The tragic accident that happened in the Judd White House became public knowledge, and the house was left empty with no one wanting to occupy it. Yeah, more than fair. I'm like, what's rent? Also, what happened? No. The house remained abandoned for 10 years after the accident until they finally just decided to tear the thing down completely. Thus, in 1924, they built the Bell Telephone Building on the ground, which still is in operation today. Yeah, they didn't tear that one down. That one's still going strong. Due to the horrifying scenes that happened on the grounds of the Bell Building, many claim that the spirits of Randall and Virginia still remain, haunting the new building. Some say that ghosts move into the new building and remain there to this day. I mean, I think that's possible. Ghosts like to move. They like to They can go through walls. They can probably relocate. Through the years of operation in the office building, visitors and employees all report being harassed by strange late-night calls, which have been traced back to be coming from inside of the building itself. Yeah, inside the house. You guessed it. It's upstairs. That's so scary. Due to this and the strange, eerie feelings that the employees feel while they're even working, it's safe to say Randall and Virginia may remain on the grounds. Most likely. They're definitely there. It sounds like they're there. They're for sure there. Number 3, the Henderson Castle. Established in 1895, this castle is a hub for many spirits and paranormal activity. I mean, it's a castle. The original owners, Frank and Mary Henderson, are said to haunt the castle as they passed away back in 1899. Yeah, I wouldn't want to leave either, living or dead. Additionally, other spirits are said to reside in the castle, a young girl and a dog. Yeah, a dog! We've got a dog ghost. How do you deal with that? Ghost barks? That'd be so scary. In 2005, the castle was occupied by Peter Livingstone McNellis and his family. When the family resided in the castle, Livingstone's son, Vincent, before anyone else had ever reported anything strange happening in the house, he said that he saw an apparition of a figure in the Victorian room, originally the changing room for one Mary Henderson. The son said while pointing at a picture of a woman dressed in an old period clothing, some Victorian clothing, that was the woman he saw wearing that same clothing. I would throw up. If someone ever said that, I'd be like, oh, this Victorian painting? And one former innkeeper who stayed at the castle each night told Livingstone on numerous occasions that she also felt a presence coming up and down the staircase, a movement passing her on the stairs when she would walk by. Ugh, these are scary. Top 5 is like, or top 10 is scary fish. This is hard. This is some scary stuff. 9 a.m. I'm already getting spooked. While now the castle is being used for a bed and breakfast, guests have fallen victim to ghosts as well. Yeah, it's not over yet. The Henderson Castle is a very paranormal active ground that many ghost hunters have investigated, and they've confirmed, in fact, that it's haunted by spirits. I trust them. The people that can go into these castles and physically do this, I'm like, yep, I trust your opinion, whatever. He just comes out, he's like, haunted. We're like, thanks, Daryl. This has been confirmed as these ghosts have interacted with many paranormal investigator teams, in addition to guests and employees of the castle. Yeah, they're just harassing everyone. The ghosts seem to be friendly, not evil whatsoever, so that's a good side, I guess, to being haunted by ghosts. They have been known to speak and physically touch guests and employees. Just they touch them on their back, side, shoulder, always in the back. You never see it coming. It's always in this region. Not only that, but there's also been reports of radios making weird noises or turning on by themselves, even though they're either unplugged or just either turned off. Both bad, both scary. Guests and employees have also reported hearing footsteps upstairs, slamming doors from unexplainable sources, and some ghosts have been wearing the clothes that they wore while they were alive. Clothes that they wore while they died in, probably. As the spirit of Mary Henderson has been reported as many guests at the top of the staircase, wearing her usual getup. Imagine being like a clown, like a jester, and then you die in that, and that's what you look like as a ghost. You're like, what? I was doing a mascot gig. I don't want to look like a shark forever. Number 2, Allegan Lodge. The old Allegan Elk Lodge was built in 1909. It was used as a psychiatric and TB hospital until its closure in 1948. The lodge was a former hospital that was frequented by mobster Al Capone, and one that many say is haunted by at least 7 different ghosts. Yeah, you thought 2 was bad. Add 5 more. Now we got 7 ghosts. And it's currently on the auction block in Allegan. If you have a lot of money and bravery, there you go. While the structure was originally built by physician John Robinson in 1909, somewhere in the 1920s, it was sold to a doctor from the Chicago area who had allegedly had underworld ties. That's a great doctor. That's just who you want working on your pancreas. Brought pancreas back today. The facility was supposedly frequented by mafia figures such as Al Capone, the Prohibition-era Chicago mob boss, and his men. Yeah, well, they needed medical attention or when they simply needed to get away from Chicago, this is where they'd go. The old Elks Lodge, Al Capone. He's like, oh, it's cozy. They have great soup. Years later, it was used as an Eagles Lodge and an Elks Lodge. And in 2010, it was acquired by an Allegan woman who began renovating the property, but now she wants to sell it. Yeah, can't imagine why. Because one of the former doctors who owns the lodge had underworld ties, maybe? Something like that? I don't know. It led to a lot of people believing that there's a lot of undercover stuff about this lodge. It's still happening to this day. I don't know why I'm doing this like it's like over there, but I'm like, there's something going on in that lodge. Especially as it's known to hold 7 different paranormal entities, like I mentioned previously. For many years, employees and visitors have told stories of spirits who relentlessly roam the building. Some of the paranormal activity that has been experienced here includes cabinets opening up by themselves in the kitchen, sounds of children laughing, it's always calming in the morning, photographic anomalies captured throughout the building, and like you name it, shadowy figures in the basement, all bad. Notably where the morgue was located. The basement, good stuff, a lot of stuff happening in there. They'd be knocking on the front door, indiscernible conversations, and ringing at the doorbell when no one was present. Yeah, good stuff. Again, I have goosebumps, they're back. Guests also heard footsteps and the sound of hospital activity long after being used as one. They'd also see full-bodied apparitions of children. They would just see ghost children. That would be it. I wouldn't have to see any more. I would just see the ghost children and be like, again, see ya. Like that's. And finally, number 1, Point O Barks Lighthouse. There are plenty of lighthouses in Michigan, and plenty of them are rumored to be haunted, of course, because they're lighthouses and they're creepy, as they normally are. And this one is no exception. Built in 1847, real old, lot of history with this one. The lighthouse is located on Point O Barks. As the legend goes, early to mid 1800s, Peter Shook had been Point O Barks' first lighthouse keeper. He was the OG. In 1849, Peter drowned while he and a couple of friends were sailing to Port Huron to pick up supplies for the lighthouse. He left behind 8 kids and his wife Catherine, and she took over at that point for Peter's duties, thus becoming Michigan's first female lighthouse keeper. Since then, people have claimed to see the spirit of Catherine walking along the edge of a cliff, dressed in mourning clothes, as she is still heartbroken by the loss of her lover, of course. As we talked about earlier, ghosts like to wear the things that they were, that they passed away in. Again, would hate to be a clown outfit, that would suck. She had also been spotted in the window of the 2nd floor wearing an apron, along with an apparition being seen, footsteps ascending and descending the tower stairs, and giggling has also been heard. Yeah, you hear giggling and there's cold spots, therefore haunted, for sure haunted. And the smell of burnt tobacco has also been wafting through the air many a times. Lighthouses are pretty stressful, more than fair. When paranormal investigators, specifically the Southeast Michigan Paranormal Society team, when they had a 2-day intensive investigation after their search, they concluded that they believe that there is every reason for the lighthouse to be haunted. The investigators did some electric voice phenomenon work in the living room, and then they heard loud thuds from overheard. Like, where did they get this gear from, Like, I want this gear. I have some questions of myself going on in the apartment. I want to swing it around a bit. A sound of something scraping along the floor as well, and additionally, during their investigation, the rocking chair had moved 2 feet and was still moving. Just love to keep rocking around. We love that. We love haunted rocking chairs. We love unexplainable forces. While they were upstairs, they also reported hearing heavy footsteps from another unknown source. So many ghosts, there's rocking chairs, people moving around, working in the basement. It doesn't sound like the afterlife is a peaceful one, if I'm being honest. Sounds like there's a lot of to do after you die. I'm not really looking forward to it. I thought I could just kind of float around in your paintings, but now it sounds like I'm gonna have to go and wear this. Wear my morning clothes, who knows?
Number 5 on this list is the Plaza Theater Performing Arts Center. Built in 1930, this beautiful theater has had many shows and screenings here over the years. For 55 years, it was in operation as one of the premier spots to have your movie shown, but in 1985, the theater shut down. It remained as such for about 20 years when in 2006, it began to get renovated. Now it's mainly just for live theater and other performance art in the city of El Paso. Like a lot of beautiful old theaters though, as time passes, legends emerge, and this one in particular certainly has its fair share. The Plaza Theater for Performance Arts Center has 3 primary ghostly apparitions it houses. The first is our very standard and very classic drifting woman in white. Looking sad and down on her luck, the spirit of this woman will often drift around through the rafters and has been seen by many workers throughout the years. The second is a man in all black who materializes in front of people. He's described a bit like a shadow creature, but slightly less menacing. I suppose if we have our woman in white, it's only fitting that we have a man in black to get a little bit of variety going. The third ghost sticks with the theme of spicing things up and is actually a little boy with a bouncing ball. It's not a basketball, but a small bouncy ball that the child seemingly plays with as he haunts the theater. Nobody knows the origin of these ghosts or how they got here at all. Are they connected? Maybe once a family unit who died here together, or are they all separate and have each suffered strange tragedies at this location over the century? El Paso, I'm sure, has some other theaters, and I'd stick to those ones if you're looking to watch some live shows if you're there. Number 4 on this list is Henley Row. Located on the Texan island of Galveston on the Gulf Coast, this is the most famous haunted spot for locals in the region. Texas Highways writes, "It's not surprising that Henley Row is a hotspot for supernatural activity. Completed between 1855 and 1858 for shippers and cotton brokers, it was the town's tallest structure during the Civil War. The roof doubled as a Confederate lookout for Union ships. Galveston and nearby barrier islands, history have been laced with tragedy. It was the site of a bloody Civil War fight, and serial epidemics of yellow fever decimated the populace. Hurricanes blast through regularly. The 1990 storm left up to 12,000 casualties in the worst natural disaster in US history. No wonder Texas writer Brian Woolley called Galveston an old cemetery with a beach attached. The resident ghosts of Henley Row represent aspects of Galveston history. There's the Confederate soldier seen on the roof and around the building. The bloodied teenage factory worker is a vestige of the building's cotton grading days. The lady in white and the running and playing little boy and little girl are thought to be 1900 storm victims. The upper floors house apartments and offices now, but Henley Market's glass ceiling reveals views of stairs and landings. During renovations, workers reported tools mysteriously moving around. Staff recall other spooky experiences as well. Some years ago, a friend gave her old photo of Dr. Wilbur from a house on Church Street that's always displayed in the shop. When Hurricane Ike inundated the building with 10 feet of water in 2008, the photo went undamaged while many other things were destroyed. Every year on November 1st, employees construct an elaborate Day of the Dead altar that includes the photo and lighted candles. Before closing, the staff follows a 3-person backup routine to ensure the candles are completely extinguished, even dousing them with water. Yet almost every single year, 1 or more candles are burning the next morning. I can't imagine working at a place where we had to light candles for our ghost altar. Like, that action alone would make me want to quit immediately. I suppose the one good thing is that the ghosts here don't appear to be particularly evil or wanting to inflict harm. Still though, waking up and heading to work is already a tall task as it is, but knowing that there's a dead little boy and girl waiting there, yeah, that's a solid no-go for me. Number 3 on this list is the USS Lexington. The ship has its own museum dedicated to it now, and it is 100% haunted. The decommissioned World War II aircraft carrier is riddled with different phantoms. This museum is literally said to receive, on average, hundreds of reports of ghostly apparitions in 1 year. That is so much supernatural energy that is just congregated here. Now, World War II was obviously an awful time, and if this boat played a major role in the Battle of the Atlantic, which I imagine it did, then it assuredly saw its fair share of tragedies. The ghosts are not quiet about their presence, they make themselves very known. One of the most famous ones resides in the engine room. Apparently, visitors will go there and a spirit will form explaining the engines and how they work. Then, when his lecture is over, poof, he will be gone in a puff of smoke. There's also a general sailor that walks around the ship and is actually said to be rather helpful. However, with these tame ghosts, there are some troublemakers as well. Small items that you may have on your person, a wallet, a watch, a phone, a keychain, anything like that are often reported missing after people get on the ship. If you do intend to go here, then hold on to your valuables very closely and get ready for a long lecture on engines. Number 2 on this list is Bragg Road. For over 100 years now, this road has been haunted by a very strange and ghostly light. It's been seen by hundreds of people during that time, and nobody can explain it. Texas Highways says, in the heart of the big thicket is Hardin County, and in the heart of Hardin County is the infamous Bragg Road, home to countless sightings of the ghost road light that appears to nighttime travelers on the road between Saratoga and the defunct village of Bragg Station. Before the current road was built, the Arrow Strait clearing served as Santa Fe Railroad's branch line built in 1903. From its inception, locals considered the line haunted by Mexican laborers murdered by a thieving foreman, a deserter shot by Confederate soldiers, a hunter lost forever in the woods, and a decapitated railroad brakeman searching for his head. But all the stories share a common theme, a floating orb of light. The road replaced the railroad tracks in 1934, but the light remained, seen by hundreds of people over the decades. In the 1960s, Archer Fullingham, editor of the County News, spread its notoriety in articles. National Geographic published a clear photo of the light in a 1974 feature about the Big Thicket. Texas folklorist Francis Albernithi documented sighting stories from the old-timers and young folks alike. In 1997, Hardin County designated Bragg Road as Ghost Road Scenic Drive Park. A pretty road through the woods in the daytime turns into a spooky spot for supernatural sightings by night. Word is the most auspicious times to see the light are on moonless autumn nights. What the heck is this light that has been haunting this place for all these years? Even National Geographic, a very highly reputable column, has posted stories on it with actual photos including it. If it's a manifestation of some of these ghosts, then which ghost is causing it, and maybe more importantly, is it dangerous? If you want to find out, then you need to head to Bragg Road and look for yourself, but I wouldn't recommend it, honestly. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Yorktown Memorial Hospital. This hospital is definitely up there as one of the most haunted spots in Texas, and could even make a play for the most haunted spots in America. It was built in the 1950s and managed by the Roman Catholic Church for a few decades before eventually closing down in 1986. Then for 8 more years until 1992, it was a drug rehab facility, but finally in 1992, it closed for good. Since then, it's been abandoned and gained some very serious ghostly legends by the locals. One of the most famous demonic creatures that resides here is this black specter with bright glowing red eyes. It's not shy either and will attack you if you're here alone or in a vulnerable state. This is the most famous of the presences here, but it isn't alone. The ghost of a man who appears to have a bullet wound directly in his forehead is also said to live here. His ghost is a lot less forceful than the dark demon though, and is said to just show himself to visitors rather than attack them. The spirits of nuns are said to be on the 2nd floor though as well. These spirits are similar to our demon creature and will claw and scratch at people who decide to come here. Along with all of this, we also get our classic indicators of a haunted location, such as feelings of despair as you walk through, temperature changes, and moans echoing throughout the building. Avoid this place at all costs if you want to keep a tight grip of your sanity. Number 5 on this list is Hromovish Meadow. Considering how difficult that is to say, and it did take me a while, for the rest of this entry I'm going to refer to this place as the Lightning Meadow. The Lightning Meadow is located near the village of Kupiish in the northern areas of the country. It's pretty isolated and completely surrounded by thick forests. Even though it's relatively out in the middle of nowhere, it's still developed quite the legend for itself. This is largely due to the incredibly strange phenomena that occur at this place. As you probably guessed by the nickname that I gave to it, these strange occurrences involve lightning. Roughly a dozen people have been struck by lightning at this one location. That's a lot of people to get struck by lightning in one faraway Ukrainian meadow. Sometimes this place also emits a very strange glow. Locals will see it in the sky and know to stay away. It's this large cylinder of light that comes from the meadow and darts into the sky so all around the area can see it. This place also reportedly gives off the same feelings as our typical haunted spots, with many people who visit it feeling immense sensations of dread. Potentially they're just dreading getting hit by lightning though, because it seems that the odds are pretty good here. Locals avoid this meadow, and my recommendation to you, unless you want to get a very powerful shock, is to do the same. Number 4 on this list is Pidhirsti Castle. This castle is considered to be one of the most beautiful in the whole country. Its construction started out with a defensive fortification that was built in the 15th century and then blossomed from there to what it is today. The beauty of this castle is slightly overshadowed though by the creepy legends that currently surround it. A Ukrainian blog writes, "The history of the famous palace has many mysterious pages. There are many incredible rumors about one of the owners of the castle, a politician, Sirin Rizwuski, because of his rather peculiar hobby. They say that in his secret alchemical laboratory, Rizwuski was making a magical longevity potion and was searching for a philosopher's stone to create gold. He conducted these experiments and organized treasure hunting to attempt to improve the financial situation of the family. Today in the dungeon of the castle, you can find an alchemical workshop. In the dusk, among the magical items, you can immerse yourself in the mysterious past of the castle." This isn't the only mystery that surrounds this place though. One of the most famous legends talks of a young girl who approaches visitors and asks to be given a proper Christian burial. It's believed that she's the ghost of a young woman who was banished from the castle by her husband and left for dead. There's also a white lady that floats throughout the castle walls. It's unclear whether the young girl and the white lady are one and the same, or if they're two separate ghosts sharing the same space. This castle has been featured on several television shows specifically about haunting, so if you desperately do feel the need to visit it, then I recommend at least giving one of those a watch first so you know what you're getting yourself into. Number 3 on this list is Vignina Lake. Vignina Lake is located in central Ukraine and is considered to be one of the most haunted lakes in the world. This lake is often not referred to as Vignina Lake though, it actually is the ghost lake. If you ever visit this lake, then you'll see a very interesting sight. Typically there'll be a lot of people around. Some will be fishing, others may be picnicking, some may be hiking along the side, but no one, not a single person in all of this will be swimming. The name Vignina is a derivative of the Ukrainian word for window. window. It's believed that this lake is actually a window into a whole other world, that this lake is a portal that can bring spirits from this other dimension, and if you aren't careful, send you down into it as well. Because of this lake's designation as a portal to another world, the water has some special qualities. For one, it never freezes. Ukraine can get pretty cold, but no matter how cold the area gets, this lake refuses to freeze over. This is probably due to the incredible amount of energy that's within it. This energy also makes the fish grow incredibly quickly. The rate of growth and the overwhelming size of some of the fish that are in this lake make it one of the best spots for fishermen in the whole country. It's unclear if anyone has actually been lost down into this portal, but it seems the locals believe in this lake legend enough that they don't want to see for themselves. Honestly, seeing a portal to another world would be pretty cool, but who knows what could come out of there. Highly recommend going if you want to fish or see some nice scenery. Highly don't recommend going if you're looking to take a dip though. Number 2 on this list is Bilhorod Dnistrovsky Fortress. Yeah, try saying that 5 times fast. This fortress is also referred to as the Ackerman Fortress and was first built over 1,000 years ago. It's one of the largest castles in all of Ukraine and also one of the biggest tourist attractions. The scenery is lovely, the architecture is beautiful, but the draw of these tourists is typically the hauntings. This castle is built over a collection of underground passageways. These passageways may look abandoned if you go down there, but locals believe them to be the home of some very strange creatures. Reports have come out over the years of people passing by the castle getting attacked by some dark-horned entities. These beasts have a very unique and pungent odor to them and are incredibly stealthy. The attacks have taken place at nighttime, and the victims of these have said that they were so fast that they couldn't defend themselves. The leading theory is that this is the home to some demonic kind of Australopithecus. If you're unfamiliar with what that is, then it's a type of ape that had both human and ape-like features. Very strong, very fast, and excellent climbers. These things used to live in Africa. How they managed to take up refuge at this castle in Ukraine and develop devil horns is anyone's guess. Ukraine has tons of castles to explore, so don't feel bad about leaving this one off your list and visiting some of the other ones instead. Number 1 on this list is Lisa Hora. Look up any list of haunted spots in Ukraine, and I guarantee that they will all have Lisa Hora close to the top. Nowadays, this place is a beautiful Ukrainian park, but it's had a deep and dark history attached to it. It's located in Kiev, and many of the local Kievians don't like to go near it. Over the years, this place has been used as a military plant, a garrison prison, and a defense base. All of these places during their history have been the host to some very untimely and brutal deaths. Maybe the most sinister things that this place has been home to are the ancient pagan rituals that took place here. For several hundreds of years, this was considered to be a sacred spot, and sacrificial pagan rituals would happen every now and again. The pagan sacrifices eventually stopped, but then the state-sanctioned executions began. That's right, guys, this is also a place where state criminals were executed. In fact, the gallows from that time are said to still be standing. Throw on the fact that there have been an uncomfortably large number of people taking their own life here, and you get the perfect storm to lead to some serious hauntings. For one, the feelings of dread and despair here are widely documented. This is actually why a lot of people believe there have been so many self-inflicted deaths here. Rather than somebody deciding this is where they want to end their life, they actually enter the park in good spirits and then come to that decision by just being exposed to the environment for a long period of time. Along with these feelings of dread, there have also been a ton of reports about the smell. People have said that they felt the touch by some sort of creature and that an incredibly stinky odor has filled the air when they do. Some people have speculated that maybe this forest is home to the Walking Dead or guarded by some ogre-like being because of these smells. It may even be home to several demons that we've yet to identify. Whatever sick and scary thing lives inside of it, it's clear that it doesn't want you or I poking around its home. Seriously wouldn't recommend putting Lisa Hora on the travel plans if you're headed to Ukraine. Number 5 on this list is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Operating from 1864 to 1994, this asylum, like most of the entries on this list, has certainly been through the ringer. This place was meant to only house 250 people at its max, but on many occasions had over 2,400 people residing here. Everyone was crammed in like animals, and considering this building was never meant to see this many patients at once, the living conditions were pretty horrible. Whenever you cram that many people into a small space together, especially an asylum, some pretty nasty things will go down as well. Several murders have taken place here over the years, along with incidents of patients and workers taking their own life. The haunting of this location was pretty progressive and didn't come on all at once. Reports date back to the early 1900s and got increasingly more frequent as time went on. Eventually it became clear by the later 1900s that this was no longer a usable space and they needed to move on. This is why it shut down in 1994 and has no medical purpose at this point. In fact, now the only thing that it has is ghost tours. The owner of this place know the legends are far stretching with this asylum and intend to make a profit on it. The ghosts are decently friendly here, or at least for the most part aren't dangerous. However, there have been a few instances where individuals have been scared to a point of serious and significant trauma. If you do plan to go here, then make sure you have a thick skin and aren't frightened easily. Number 4 on this list is haunted Harper's Ferry. Harper's Ferry is a small town in West Virginia that honestly looks like something out of a storybook. It's comprised of roughly 100 19th century restored buildings. As you can imagine, it's a very quiet town and there isn't too much of a big city vibe going on here at all. This place wasn't always quiet though. In the American Civil War, this town played a pivotal role and was fought over multiple times throughout the years. People believe that it was through the death during the Civil War that this place has developed an affinity to spirits. Deborah Block says, at the nearby True Treats historic candy store, chocolate and other candies are brightly lit on tables and in baskets. The cute and welcoming shop is popular with visitors, hardly seeming like a place where a ghost would want to hang out. But store manager Tara Dockman, known as the Ghost Lady, in town for her sensitivity to paranormal activity, says there are 2 ghosts who frequent the store, and she even knows one of them by name. The female has a white flowy gown and she goes to the top floor of the store where there are no customers, she explained. And Colby, a man, likes to show himself and usually shows a shoulder or a pants leg which you'll see walk across a room. They both like to throw candy around and slam doors on customers. Dockman said Colby is a troublemaker who may also push people. She assured me that she had spoken to him about not bothering me while I was in the shop and was hiding in a corner storage area. Tara isn't some nutbag who's the only one who sees ghosts here either. Tons of people in the town have had run-ins with them. In fact, the biggest attraction this town has to offer are the ghost tours that highlight how haunted this place truly is. Number 3 on this list is Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. The park is no longer functional, and based on all of the incidents that went down here, that's probably a good thing. It all started in the 1700s when a settler, Mitchell Clay, and the local Shawnee Native Americans fought and ended with 3 of Clay's dying and lots of Shawnee warriors passing away as well. This was the inciting incident of the tragic movie that is Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Also, 200 years later in the 1920s, this land was bought and turned into an amusement park. The buyer wasn't aware of this history though and didn't realize the dark mark that had been left here by that battle so many years ago. There were a decent amount of tragic incidents that went down here while the amusement park was operational, but there are 2 that stand out as being the most stunning. The first one involved a young girl on the swings. While she was on the swings, a delivery truck, without seeing her, backed straight into her and she passed away. The second one involved someone who drowned in the swimming pool because their arm got stuck in the drain. The amusement park had seen enough and shut down in 1966. It was roughly 20 years later that they discovered the history of this place and pieced it all together, assuming that a curse must have been responsible. Locals don't dare go to this place anymore for fear of this curse. It should also be noted that the few who have stepped foot on this place again have reported run-ins with that young girl who died so many years ago. It seems that this curse won't allow her spirit to pass on, and now she wanders the area. I'm sure that there are a bunch of other amusement parks in West Virginia that are a lot more fitting and functional than this one. Highly recommend avoiding Lake Shawnee altogether. Number 2 on this list is West Virginia Penitentiary. Would this really be a most haunted place list if we didn't throw a prison on here? Paranormal activity usually favors places that have seen a lot of tragedies and sadness, and this penitentiary has definitely had its fair share. This prison opened up in the 1860s and was active for 119 years before finally being shut down. In that time, it saw over 100 executions, countless riots where people were either severely injured or died, fires, and an insane amount of human rights violations. All of this has led to what we have now, which is just a really haunted prison. Though the prisoners are gone, they're not forgotten, and by many accounts, the ghosts of some of the 998 men who died here still roam free. There's a shadow man that has been seen and even photographed. Staff of the prison have been accosted by unseen forces. Strange noises still echo throughout the cell blocks, and something dark lurks in the bowels of the building. That was a small passage from Moundsville Haunted History, who are familiar with the prison. 998 men though. That's how many different individuals are thought to potentially haunt this place. That's literally a full-on ghost army right there, guys. This place must have been horrible if that many people's souls are left wandering around this space. If I was the owner of this spot, I'd do those 998 people a favor and just knock this place to the ground. Maybe then these ghosts can finally rest. And finally, number 1 on this list is Point Pleasant. This has got to be the top spot on our list, just considering the amount of lore surrounding the creature here. The Mothman. If you're watching videos on this channel, then I imagine you're already probably familiar with what this creature is, but for those who aren't, the Mothman is a humanoid creature reportedly seen in the Point Pleasant area from November 15th, 1966 to December 15th, 1967. Shayla Klein says, according to legend, Mothman is a black 10-foot creature with wings and red eyes. Articles and newspapers at the time were reporting that the monster was also commonly seen in the TNT area near town, with some locals speculating that perhaps people were really seeing cranes or owls, and others wondering if the creature was created in some sort of mutation accident involving the chemicals associated with storing TNT. Regardless, legend has it that mysterious men in black suits began visiting the town shortly after the sighting reports. The most infamous sighting of Mothman was on December 15th, 1967. Locals said that they saw Mothman on top of or flying over the Silver Bridge, which was a suspension bridge over the Ohio River that connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio. According to Mothman lore, shortly after the creature was spotted on the bridge collapsed, resulting in the deaths of 46 people. An investigation into the disaster found that a fracture in a suspension chain was the cause. This is one of the most famous American urban legends ever. The amount of people who saw this creature during this period of time, and the fact that high-ranking secret officials started to investigate it, all point to its legitimacy. It was active for about a year and then just totally disappeared though, and nobody knows what happened to it. The leading theory is that the government was able to capture whatever it was and probably took it to a secret base to study it. If that's the case, then Point Pleasant is most likely safe now, but be wary of what's flying over top of you if you do decide to go here.
Coming in at number 5, we have Goldfield, Arizona. Being deemed as one of Arizona's most haunted places, we have the town of Goldfield. Founded in 1893, Goldfield was a promising land for gold mining. The town grew rapidly, gaining 1,500 residents during its first year. The space was quick to build businesses including stores, a blacksmith, a butcher, a brewery, and 3 saloons. Though the town of Goldfield met its fall just as quickly as it was built up. After 5 short years, the gold ran out and people began to dwindle, eventually leaving it fully abandoned, securing its ghost town status. Being classified as a ghost town doesn't necessarily mean a place is haunted by ghosts, but this is not the case for the Goldfield ghost town. There's plenty of documentation and investigations that point to Goldfield being a paranormal active ground. It is known that a mysterious figure lurks within the shadows of the Goldfield ghost town, Bordello. It is unclear who this spirit would have been in life, yet it is commonly believed he was once a miner who lived in the town. Unexplainable knocks and bangs are heard in the building, and some unfortunate visitors have been scratched. This activity is attributed to a dark character who's usually seen wearing a cowboy hat. Just on the horizon of the Goldfield ghost town sits a landscape made ominous by its name and the legend surrounding it. The Superstition Mountains are cloaked in mystery and at the center of many fables, making them notorious among the paranormal community. The Superstition Mountains carry many secrets, the most famous being the location of a supposed deposit of gold and riches in the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. A curse has kept this treasure safe since the days of Goldfield's mining boom. Many have set out to locate these riches, and many have returned empty-handed or found only death. Countless adventurers have perished in the Arizona heat pursuing this chase. Their ghosts are said to now haunt the mountainside. Other secrets of the mountain have people believing that the hill is a place where evil spirits hid and told stories of a devil that lived behind the mountain. There's also a rumored apparition of a hugely tall skeleton named the Borrego Phantom, which appears to those exploring the mountain after dark. Another layer of creepiness is added to the mountain by the local legend that reptile-looking people surface there after dark. All of these creepy mysteries are summed up pretty nicely in the Superstition Mountain's name. In at number 4 we have Glen Rio, New Mexico. Found on the state border of Texas and New Mexico lies the town of Glen Rio. Founded in 1901, it was a town where wheat and cattle farmers settled and grew a community. Being divided between two states made for some unusual customs in Glen Rio. The mail would arrive at a train depot on the Texas side, but would have to be transported to the post office on the New Mexico side. The Texas side was part of a dry county, so all the bars were on the New Mexico side. Because the gasoline tax was higher in New Mexico, all the service stations were on the Texas side. By 1920, Glen Rio had a hotel, a hardware store and a land office, as well as several grocery stores, service stations and cafes. Though Glen Rio's permanent population never rose above 30 people, the town survived with its tourist-based businesses catering to the many travelers along Route 66. By 1985, only 2 residents remained in the small town, and the Texas post office was the only business open. It too has long since closed. Other buildings have overgrown sites, missing windows, or debris surrounding them. The detritus of 4 decades when Glen Rio welcomed tens of thousands, fed and entertained them, and sent them on their way towards Chicago or California. In at number 3 we have Nevada City in Montana. Miners settled in Nevada City in 1963, along with establishing their homes and businesses in this new town. Located in southwestern Montana, the town is 1.5 miles from Virginia City. The town was thriving up until 1876 when the gold miners moved to other promising sites. In 1896, the Connery Placer Mining Company destroyed most of the city's buildings. The company dredged the gulch and later abandoned it, leaving heavy wooden barges. This abandoned town being haunted is old news, as the Nevada City Hotel is reported to be frequented by the apparition of a road agent who lost their life nearby, according to online sources. Visitors have also reported hearing footsteps in the hallways and seeing shadowy figures standing behind their reflections in mirrors. Additionally, the spirit of an older cowboy figure who never speaks but lurks in the hotel rooms and even sits at the bar in the Virginia City. Back when the hotel operated, guests also complained of a weeping woman, always in the same room, only to be told there was no guest in the room in question. In at number 2 we have Custer, Idaho. The mining town of Custer was born in 1879 by gold miners looking for their next gold hotspot. Prospectors discovered gold in what would become known as the Yankee Fork area of central Idaho in 1867. The area was worked on a small scale for more than a decade before the discovery of General Custer Mine. The General Custer Mining Company closed in 1888 and the district experienced a sharp decline. In 1899, the town of Custer has 5 saloons, 3 stores, a hotel and 3 boarding houses, but the town never established even one church. By 1910, most of the mines in the area were closed and the Yankee Forks boom years came to an end. The combined population of Custer and the nearby Bonanza was just 66 people. The Silver Messenger reports just 2 families remaining in Custer in 1911 and then being fully abandoned the year following. Today it has been purchased by the US Forestry Service and, in conjunction with the Friends of Custer Society, is slowly being made into a historic site. Some original buildings have already been renovated, some are in process, and many others are slated to be restored. Several buildings lost in a 1960s grass fire are due to be replaced with replicas. The Forgotten Town is a landmark for many people such as tourists and especially paranormal investigators. In the old schoolhouse is a museum containing items left behind and showcases the town's unique history. Although interesting, you can't help but get an eerie feeling thinking about the people who once owned these items, as walking into one of these structures is like walking back in time. To think this town was once active with human energy and miners working every single day. And finally, in at number 1 we have South Pass City, Wyoming. Only about 10 miles north of the Oregon Trail is the shell of a town that used to be a busy gold mining camp. Established in a small valley along the banks of Willow Creek, the town was born in 1867. The town was built there because gold was discovered in the Wind River Mountains. By 1868, South Pass City boasted over 250 buildings, 1,000 people, and hundreds of claims. The town was extremely busy as its half-a-mile-long main street boasted numerous hotels, restaurants, general stores, 2 newspapers, doctors, a bowling alley, and dozens of saloons. The mining district continued to grow to as many as 3,000 residents. Miners looking for investors and newspapers promoting further settlement in the area exaggerated the region's amount of gold. But for South Pass City, its great success wouldn't last, and just 2 years after its establishment would begin to show its first signs of declining. Hitting a fall in early 1869, the town resurged briefly after outsider capital was poured into the area, but would fall again as expenses and hardships to recover the gold proved too costly for most miners. By 1872, the town was only occupied by only a few hundred people. In the end, South Pass would become a permanent ghost town. By 1949, the last of the pioneer families had moved on from South Pass City, and the buildings had fallen into disrepair. The grounds of the old town are known to be haunted, and Highway 287 that follows the route of the Oregon Trail over South Pass, which is the reason South Pass City ever existed, has had its fair share of ghost sightings. According to a local ghost story, a woman was driving home from a long day in Denver. Her friend had fallen asleep in the passenger seat. After passing through Jeffrey City, the driver spotted a dark, hunched figure walking toward the road in the sagebrush. About a half-mile later, she saw the same figure closer to the road. She noted his pig coat as he became clearer. About a half-mile later, still thinking about this man and his surprising reappearance, she reached over to wake her friend and request she take a turn driving. As her friend awoke, she saw the same man at the edge of the road, just crossing the white line onto the highway next to the car. Screaming, they accelerated away and compared descriptions. It was certainly the same man. Coming in at number 5, we have Hotel Park Central. Located on Central Avenue in Albuquerque, you'll find Hotel Park Central. The original building was constructed in 1924 and served as a hospital. It was then purchased in the 1980s and transformed into a mental health hospital. However, in 2010, a major renovation occurred with a $21 million investment, and it became the luxury hotel that we know today. The hauntings in this building date back to the time it served as a hospital. Patients would report seeing apparitions, hearing voices, seeing objects move, and feeling the presence of other beings when nobody was there. As well, when it was a mental hospital, it was known by patients and workers that on the top floor on the right wing, there is a ghost of a woman that likes to watch people in the hallways. Patients also reported having their bedsheets pulled off them in the middle of the night. Patients were not the only ones to experience things that couldn't be explained though. Staff of the hospital did too. They would often have the sensation of being watched, as well as hearing something whisper in their ear, the movement of objects, and a general sense of heaviness throughout the buildings. Today, many guests at the hotel report similar paranormal experiences, as many guests report feeling watched in the presence of unseen beings. They have also reported hearing voices and shuffling in the stairwells. Several guests have also seen a female apparition on the 3rd floor wing. A group of paranormal investigators were brought onto the scene of the hotel. The investigators were 3 team members who all experienced unexplained voices and whispering while close to the hotel. They also reported distinct coolness near their bodies and a sense of being watched. After reviewing their evidence, some of these experiences were captured on digital voice recorders. They also carried out the flashlight technique, an attempt at communication with the spirit that involves the answering of questions through the turning on and off of the flashlight. This was a success, with several responses captured on video. In at number 4, we have the St. James Hotel. Built in 1972 by Henry Lambert, the St. James Hotel was established. Found in Cimarron, New Mexico, the hotel is known to be one of the most haunted places in America. The St. James Hotel is said to remain host to several restless spirits. Both the owners and the hotel guests will tell you that many unexplained events haunt it. Several psychics have visited the hotel and specifically identified 3 spirits and many others who passed through to relive their experiences. The hotel's 2nd floor is the most active, with stories of cold spots and the smell of cigar smoke lingering in the halls. A prior manager commented about the spirits that linger in the hotel and said, "You never see them, but you do feel and hear them." Another report from a former owner states that she walked into the dining room and saw a pleasant-looking cowboy standing behind her in the mirror on the front of the bar. The spiritual activity of the hotel has been featured on the popular television show Unsolved Mysteries and A Current affair. Room 18 at the hotel is kept locked because it houses the ghost of an ill-tempered Thomas James Wright, who lost his life at his door just after winning the rights to the hotel in a poker game. Having been injured from behind, Wright continued into the room and slowly met the end of his life. Because of the tragic accident that happened in room 18, it is known as one of the scariest and most haunted rooms. This can be seen with one former owner who said she was pushed down while in the room, and on another occasion saw a ball of angry orange light floating in the upper corner. The staff considers the room to be the most haunted, and people are rarely allowed to enter this room, much less sleep in it. Rumours abound that when the room was rented, several mysterious deaths occurred there. Other unknown entities are also said to roam the hotel, creating a host of paranormal activities. Staff report that items constantly fall off walls and shelves, and electrical equipment at the front desk behaves unpredictably. Others have reported cold spots throughout the historic inn, lights that seemingly turn on by themselves, feelings of being watched by unseen eyes, and cameras that cease to work inside the hotel, strangely returning to normal after leaving St. James. In at number 3 we have Kaimo Theatre. Built in 1927, this grand palace of a theatre certainly is a masterpiece of Pablo Deco fused with Art Deco. The creation of this beautiful southwestern style theatre was financed by a hard-working wealthy entrepreneur, Oreste Bacecci, who wanted to fulfill a lifelong dream of building a grand theatre which would rival other larger-than-life movie palaces that were springing up around the United States. A large fire in 1963 destroyed Kaimo Theatre's iconic stage and much of the building, prompting the Bacecci family to demolish it. In 1977, the same year, the theatre was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The citizens of Albuquerque voted to purchase Kaimo Theatre at a steep discount. In return, the city of Albuquerque offered to fund the restoration of the landmark attraction. With the change of hands, local restoration experts were hired to restore Kaimo Theatre to its former glory. The hauntings of Kaimo Theatre can be traced back to a freak accident that happened in the late afternoon on August 2nd, 1951. Back then, hundreds of moviegoers were in Kaimo Theatre to catch the latest films. Without warning, a water heater located in the theatre's lobby exploded, sending scalding hot steam and plaster into the air. A total of 8 people were injured in the accident, including one person losing their life, Bobby Darnell. Since then, the theatre is said to be haunted by the ghost of Bobby. Performers and staff of Kaimo Theatre have all reported strange and unexplainable activities happening in the theatre. In particular, donuts placed backstage for performers would often go missing. To appease the spirit of Bobby, an altar was erected beneath the stairs to the dressing rooms. Toys, sweets and donuts would be placed before every major performance to ensure the success of each show. Those who didn't would face a disastrous performance. Kaimo Theatre's technical manager Dennis Potter recounted an incident in December 1986 when the donuts were removed by Andrew Shear, director of A Christmas Carol, just minutes before the first show. It did not take long before the disaster occurred. Electrical cables fell, lights exploded, doors on the set opened without warning, and performers had forgotten their lines. After the end of the disastrous show, the donuts were promptly replaced and the next show went off without a hiccup. However, an interview with Andrew contradicted the Potter's story, with the former claiming that the donuts were never removed or replaced. Apart from the unexplainable disruptions, staff working at Kaimo Theatre have also reported seeing the ghost of Bobby, dressed in a striped shirt and blue pants. The ghost of Bobby is often seen loitering on the lobby staircase, looking for the next victim of his harmless shenanigans. In at number 2 we have LaFonda Hotel. Standing in Santa Fe, New Mexico, there is the historic LaFonda Hotel. Over the years, the hotel was destroyed and rebuilt several times over. In 1821, when Captain William Becknell blazed the path of what would become known as the Santa Fe Trail, he stayed at a LaFonda where the trail terminated at the town central plaza. As more and more pioneers traveled the Santa Fe Trail, the LaFonda became a popular destination for trappers, traders, mountain men, soldiers, politicians, and the like. The current LaFonda was built in 1922 on the site of the previous inns. In 1925, it was acquired by the Atchison, Topeka Santa Fe Railroad, which leased it to Fred Harvey. For more than 40 years, from 1926 to 1968, LaFonda was one of the famous Harvey houses, a renowned chain of fine hotels. Today, the LaFonda Hotel is said to host not only travelers visiting Santa Fe, but also several ghosts. Some people believe that the Honorable Judge Slough continues to walk its hallways. However, more often reported is the ghost of the distraught salesman who jumped into the well after losing all of his company's money. The hotel's dining room, called the La Plazuela, is situated directly over the old well, and both guests and staff alike have reported the sight of a ghostly figure that walks to the center of the room, then seemingly jumps into the floor and disappears. Other reported phenomena include a ghost that haunts the Santa Fe room, as well as the spirit that walks the hallways near the La Terraza, a restaurant located on the east side of the hotel's 3rd floor. In the 1970s, 1970s, a ghost reportedly called the front desk to complain that someone was walking up and down the hallway in front of his room. When an employee was sent to investigate, he saw a tall man in a long black coat disappear into a stairwell. However, when he followed him to the stairs, there was no sign of the mysterious visitor. And finally, in at number 1, we have the Luna Mansion. The Luna Mansion in Los Lunas, New Mexico is known for one thing, and it's its ghost stories. Over the years, the Luna Mansion in Los Lunas has gained a reputation as being haunted. Guests and staff alike have shared stories of unexplained activity, which some chalk up to the paranormal. Over the years, the mansion changed hands several times before it was purchased and renovated as a fine dining establishment in the 1970s. It was then that the ghost of Josephina began to appear. Perhaps she didn't like the renovations, or maybe she just wants to stick around to make sure they were doing a good job on the home that she had spent so many years looking after. Dressed in 1920s period clothing, she had been described by employees as appearing very real. Most often she is seen in 2 former bedrooms on the 2nd floor, an attic, storeroom, and at the top of the stairs leading to the 2nd floor bar. At the top of the stairs sits an old rocking chair, which she has often been seen sitting in and rocking slowly. On one occasion, when an employee approached the ghost, she simply stood up and then slowly vanished. More often she is seen walking up and down the stairs, a habit that has been so commonplace that employees barely notice anymore. Where there's one spirit, others seem to follow, and more ghostly apparitions have been seen at the mansion. One of these is a former servant named Cruz, who was thought to have been a groundskeeper. Most often seen on the main level, he is said to be particularly friendly to women and children and likes to play practical jokes on the employees and patrons. On one occasion, he was seen sitting on a sofa as if waiting to be served. Dressed in vintage attire, the man was relaxing patiently when a waitress asked another staff member why he hadn't been served. However, the response was, "What man?" and when the waitress looked back to the sofa, the vintage spirit faded away. Coming in at 5, West Virginia Penitentiary. Opened all the way back in 1875, the West Virginia Penitentiary in Moundsville is said to be one of the most haunted prisons in the states. The first building constructed on the site was the North Wagon Gate, which was made with hand-cut sandstone. The state used prison labor during the process, and work continued on this first phase up until 1876. Following completion, the prison consisted of the North Wagon Gate, north and south cell blocks, a kitchen, dining area, hospital, and chapel, as well as a 4-story tower connecting the 2 administration buildings. The prison also included space for female inmates and personal living quarters for the warden and his family. Once the prison opened, it housed 251 male inmates, including some who helped construct the prison where they were incarcerated. The condition of the prison worsened throughout the years, and the facility was eventually ranked as one of the top 10 most violent correctional facilities. On Wednesday, November 7, 1979, 15 prisoners escaped from the prison, one of them being Ronald Turney Williams, who was serving time for murdering Sergeant David Lilly of the Beckley Police Department. He managed to steal a guard's weapon and reach the streets, where he encountered 23-year-old off-duty state trooper Philip S. Kesner, who was driving past with his wife. Kesner attempted to take action against Williams, but he was shot in the process. The prison was home to riots, fires, and nearly 100 executions during its time in operation. To this day, visitors have reported sightings of phantom inmates and a shadow man wandering the premises, as well as unexplained voices and cold spots. You can take tours around this haunted penitentiary and even view the electric chair dubbed Old Sparky. For you brave souls out there, you can also do an overnight session if you dare. Coming in at 4, North Bend Rail Trail Tunnel number 19. North Bend Rail Trail is located in Ritchie County in West Virginia and is a favorite for hikers, cyclists, and horseback riders traversing the 72-mile-long trail. However, proceed with caution if you wind up in the area, particularly around tunnel number 19, also known as the Silver Run Tunnel. History goes that on one foggy evening in 1910, an engineer spied a young woman in a flowing white dress standing on the tracks. He brought the train to a stop, but when he searched for the woman, she had vanished. He wasn't the only one to spot her either, many of his predecessors had as well. No one quite knows the origin of the woman in white, although some bones were found under a house near the tunnel. Some people say you can still spot her. Now, those who explore the tunnel are advised to bring a flashlight even during the day, with the tunnel being over 1,376 feet long, which is beyond sunlight's reach. You have been warned. Coming in at 3, Droop Mountain Battlefield. On November 6, 1863, the Battle of Droop Mountain occurred in Pocahontas County, West Virginia during the American Civil War. Confederate forces engaged but failed to prevent Union forces under General W.W. Averill from a rendezvous with other Federal troops in a joint raid on Confederate railways. Droop Mountain was one of the largest engagements in West Virginia during the war War and essentially resulted in the Confederate collapse. The battlefield site is now preserved and administered by West Virginia as a state park, and the unknown Confederate dead are buried in the Confederate Cemetery at Lewisburg. A wooden observation tower, hiking trails, and picnic tables mark the grounds where the Civil War soldiers fought, died, and some say still remain. Many visitors have reported sounds of galloping horses and sightings of the ghosts of headless Confederate soldiers, as well as one soldier lying asleep against a tree. Coming in at 2, Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. In the late 1700s, the Clay family moved to West Virginia, which is presently known as Mercer County. The Clay family, comprised of Mitchell and his wife, settled on an 800-acre farm and raised 14 children. However, in 1783, tragedy struck while Mitchell was out hunting. A few members of the Shawnee tribe killed 2 of the Clay children and burned another at the stake. In retaliation, Mitchell hunted down a handful of Native Americans and killed them. The land in turn became unoccupied for years, up until the early 1900s when Conley T. Snyder purchased the land and built a small amusement park on it. However, the amusement park had just as unfortunate luck as the Clay family. The park featured a Ferris wheel and a swing ride and was popular among locals, particularly families of coal miners who resided in the area. In the early 1950s, a young girl on the swing ride was killed when a truck delivering sodas accidentally backed into the ride, striking her. Another child also drowned in the swimming pool, which was subsequently filled in to prevent further accidents. During its operation, at least 6 people died at the park, which resulted in the park ultimately closing in 1966. In 1985, Gaylord White, a former employee of the park, purchased the land with plans to reopen it. It happened for a brief period, that is, before the park closed again after a 1988 archaeological dig uncovered numerous Native American artifacts, as well as human remains on the property that had been buried prior to the arrival of the Anglo-European settlers. In total, 13 skeletons were uncovered, mostly of young children. Perhaps the property is cursed, or perhaps it's just a series of unfortunate events. Who knows? But one thing is for sure, it is one of the most haunted places in the entire world. And finally, coming in at number 1, the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, also known as the Western State Hospital, was a Kirkbride psychiatric hospital that operated from 1864 to 1994 by the government. Originally built by Richard Andrews, it was constructed from 1858 to 1881 and was originally designed to hold 250 people. However, it became overcrowded in the 1950s, with the hospital housing 2,400 patients, resulting in it being forcibly closed in 1994 due to changes in patient treatment. Following its closure, it was then purchased by Joe Jordan in 2007 and is open for tours and other events to raise money for its restorations. During tours of the facility, witnesses have reported doors slamming, shadowy figures, and even blood-curdling screams from within the building walls. The asylum has garnered such a spooky reputation, it has appeared on shows such as Ghost Stories, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Paranormal Lockdown. It was also featured in Bethesda's 2018 video game Fallout 76 under the name Fort Defiance and acted as a base for the Brotherhood of Steel, one of the game's main factions.